Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think that's the first time we've ever started a meeting with good morning. But today's meeting is a continuation of the October 21st, 2020 regular board meeting. At the end of that meeting, the board made several decisions as to how we would proceed today. The board voted to suspend the portion of policy 1.03 that voice recorded messages be played during the meeting. At that meeting, there were 1,234 voice recorded messages for the October 21st meeting. The board received all of those voice recorded messages, and they were also placed on the website for the public to listen as well. The board also voted to hold a continuation meeting, this meeting today, Monday, November 2nd, to begin at 9 a.m. Additionally, the board, by majority vote, decided to allow for only new speakers at today's meeting and to adjust the length of those comments to 1 minute in length. School Board Policy 1.03, entitled School Board Meetings, allows for this option in Section 7F. So this morning, we will reopen the October 21st agenda and move to 17 on the agenda, new business. At the October 21st meeting, the board voted to reorder the agenda, so the remaining items under 17, new business, are only BRD2, the motion to rescind the final order in the Palm Beach County School Board versus William Latson, and P3, personnel addendum number 3, and 3 board discussion items. Before we get to BRD2, we will hear speakers who are here today on that agenda item and a recorded message from Dr. William Latson. We will now call the continuation meeting of the October 21st, 2020 meeting to order. Mrs. Bass, will you please call the roll?
District 1, Barbara McQuinn.
Here.
District 2, Chuck Shaw.
Board members, in a moment, we'll take a motion after the clerk takes the roll to allow Mr. Shaw to attend from home.
District 3, Karen Brill. Here. District 4, Erica Whitfield.
Here.
District 5, Frank Barbieri.
Here.
District 6, Marcia Andrews.
Here.
District 7, Deborah Robinson.
Here.
All right, we have a motion to allow Mr. Shaw to, motion by Ms. Whitfield, second by Ms. McQuinn. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? I assume Mr. Shaw is going to vote in favor of that, so the motion is 7-0. Also joining us are Superintendent Dr. Donald Fenoy, General Counsel Sean Bernard, Inspector General Teresa Michael, and Board Clerk Carol Bass, and Deputy General Counsel Blair Littlejohn, representing the board as to agenda item BRD2. Senior staff members will join us periodically as directed by the superintendent. This meeting is being transcribed by a closed captioner, so remember to speak at a reasonable pace. Viewers and listeners can access the meeting today by either watching on Comcast channels 234 and 235, UVerse channel 99, or by using the YouTube link on our webpage at palmbeachschools.org. We also offer a listening-only option, which the public can access by calling 561-357-5900 or toll-free at 1-866-930-7015. The meeting ID is 1-561-880-1124 #. At this time, would everyone please rise for the pledge to be led by Superintendent Dr. Fenoy.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome any public speakers who are joining us in person today. While your attendance here at the board office is appreciated, please be mindful of important safety protocols that the district now has in place to conform with COVID-19 safety guidelines. Please respect this cautionary warning that in the event of interference with the orderly processes of the meeting, failure to follow the safety protocols and procedures, or otherwise disruptive conduct, this conduct will result in removal of the person from the meeting. Please abide by these protocols so Palm Beach County School police officers do not have to take any action. As to the members of the public, we are limiting you to 1 minute today, not because we want to stifle public comments. We've already had probably more comments on this agenda item than the history of the school board has ever had on any single item before, so we've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments. In order to get through the business of the board, we have to limit the time, otherwise we would never be able to get to the final order, which there's a deadline of November 11th. And every time we change the date of this meeting, we have to do 5 days of publication, so we're going to run short on time if we don't get through everything today. So that's the reason we've limited the time so we can get to the business of the board to finish up this item. At this point, we need a motion to suspend the portion of policy 1.03 that voice recorded messages be played during this meeting other than the recorded messages from the message from Dr. William Latson. Motion by Ms. Brill, second by Mrs. Andrews. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Board members, there wasn't a place on this agenda for any comments, so unless you want to unless you have anything that you want to discuss at this point, we'll go ahead, Ms. McQuinn.
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and make my comments now, if I may.
Good.
I know that I'm removing my mask. I'm really totally healthy. I won't sneeze, but I want my comments to be heard and to not get lost in all of the more to come important comments. The last year has been an intensely personal, year-long struggle for me to come to terms with how I should vote in William Latson's termination case. My friends have listened to me for over a year, my friends and my family, and they don't all agree with how I voted a year ago. But I explained to them my reasons, and although they didn't necessarily agree with me, they understood me. They know my character, they know my heart. And so regardless, they love me unconditionally. And I appreciate that. But I've continued to struggle, and they all know that. So last week, I think maybe, I don't remember, maybe Tuesday, I searched my mind for someone to reach out to who really doesn't know me personally. And I thought of a woman that I've observed over the last 4 years that I've been on the board. I don't know her personally. I've observed her in meetings, but I've always admired that she's strong, she speaks her mind, very intelligent, very compassionate, and what was important to me is that she is a Jewish woman. I knew that she would listen to me objectively, and I knew without question that she would give me her thoughts. So she had the patience to listen to my last year's work on this case, on William Latson's case. She never interrupted me. And this was on the phone, so I'm thinking she's taking notes, right? And when I finally finished, she said something I hadn't thought about. And she said, "You're a rule follower." But she said, "I also heard that during your times as a principal, you sometimes suspended the rules for the benefit of a student or a group of students." I'm not going to reiterate those to you because I wouldn't want somebody to go back and investigate me from 20 years. So it's so interesting. When we got off the phone, I was at peace. And that's what I have shared with some of my friends. I am so at peace with the fact that I am going to rescind my vote from the October 7th meeting. And I'm going to insist that you bear with me while I tell you why. I am a rule follower.
Mrs. McQuinn?
What?
We're going to get into all the discussion on that.
I know we are. I just don't want to get lost.
No, ma'am. I'll make sure I call on you when we get there. Absolutely.
Hey, don't forget where I am. I have it marked.
Mrs. Whitfield?
I'll wait till after the speakers. Thank you.
Ms. Brill? Mrs. Andrews? Dr. Robinson?
Mr. Barbier, I'd like to yield my time so Ms. McQuinn can finish.
Dr. Robinson, we have an agenda item. There's not even a place for board discussion at this point. We have plenty of time to discuss all of this when we get to the two items we have to deal with. One is rescission, and one is the final order.
All I did was say I would like to yield whatever time I had to Ms. McQuinn. There's obviously a reason she wanted to make her comments at this point. That's all. It's not a big deal. I'm just trying to be courteous. Thank you.
Mrs. McQuinn, if you feel very strongly about doing, go ahead. Go ahead.
I do.
Go ahead.
And I am one, I have so seldom, ever gone over my comments.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
Thank you. But I was helped to remember there are exceptions to rules when the exceptions are warranted. And there are two reasons that I believe these exceptions are warranted. I believe these are two exceptions that are warranted. I can't tell you how many times I've read the entire case file that we received about a year ago. I read it, I took notes from it, I put it in chronological order, all trying to be objective. When we got the administrative law judge's recommended order, I took tons of notes from those. But something that I guess I overlooked, but has come to my attention and was speaking to this woman I'm referring to, the judge referenced the fact that progressive discipline had not been addressed regarding Dr. Latson's case. It is my understanding that our school district does not have progressive discipline policies for administrators. So that is with particularity an objection to what was part of the judge's recommended order. The other one I feel really strongly about, and believe me, when we get to discussion, I have more to say, but I want you to hear this. I have so seldom heard in the thousands of emails and phone calls any reference to our students. What Dr. Latson did was open the door for the students whose parents are Holocaust deniers to, for generations to come, deny the atrocity of the Holocaust, because they weren't required to participate in that curriculum. And that is the true travesty here. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Robinson.
At this time, Mark, would you play Dr. William Latson's recorded message?
These comments are in reference to agenda topic of new business, item BRD2. Good afternoon to the members of the School Board of Palm Beach County. This statement comes from William Latson, former principal of Spanish River High School. It has come to my attention that on Wednesday, October 7th, after the Palm Beach County School Board voted to reinstate my employment, my attorney, without my knowledge, issued a statement. The statement that I make today, this statement, is my sincere statement. When I wrote to a parent in 2018 that as an employee of Palm Beach County Public Schools, I could not state that the Holocaust was a historical fact, I apologize to the Palm Beach County community, the school board, the school administration, the parents, students, teachers of Palm Beach County, the Jewish community, and everyone offended or hurt by my mistake. I am not a Holocaust denier. I have never been a Holocaust denier. I am sorry that my comments caused people to think that. Palm Beach County Public Schools have an exemplary Holocaust education curriculum, which I ensured was taught to every student without exception while I was principal of Spanish River High School. I am sorry that my comments caused people to question that. Some may say this apology comes too late, but I believe it's never too late to do the right thing. The right thing for me to do is to make this sincere apology for the trouble my ill-considered remarks caused and express gratitude to Judge Robert Cohen for putting aside public and political pressures to follow the law. I hope that the board will accept this apology and I will also follow the law. Please let stand my reinstatement and assignment to the assessment department, which you previously approved. I assure everyone that I intend to serve faithfully and honorably to advance the Palm Beach Public Schools mission. I thank you for the opportunity to address you today, and have a nice day.
All right, I'll call the speakers that are here today. please come to the podium there in front of you. Please watch the clock. Usually, you know, we allow speakers to go over, but please don't do that today. The microphone's going to be turned off after 1 minute. So watch the clock so you know about when your time's up so that we can move on to the next speakers. We have, how many, Mrs. Bass? 48? We have a bunch. So I'll call you 3 at a time so you know which order you're going to be coming up there. Corey Biazzo, Wayne Posner, Lauren Gross. Just when you start, just please state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Wayne Posner, former councilman of the town of Jupiter. I want to thank the school district of Palm Beach County and Barbara, of course, our district representative, for her speech just now. Quickly, I'm here with my wife, Linda Posner, formerly Linda Homburger. Her father is a live witness of the Holocaust. Can you imagine his parents putting him on a train at 4 years old and his sister at 9 and never knowing if they're ever going to see them again? This is a moral issue, not a money issue, not a rules issue. This is a moral issue. And if we can't be moral in the laws and the rules that we make in this country, where else could you do it? I really appreciate everything that the board has done. Thank you all for your service. I'm just asking you to do the right thing. Once the words come out of the mouth, it goes to the universe, and everyone knows. So to bring them back now is very hard to do. We need to do the right thing and send the right message and teach our children the right history. Thank you, Barbara.
Good morning. My name is Corey Biazzo. I'm a Boca Raton attorney, Palm Beach County resident, U.S. Navy veteran, and Jewish descendant of a Holocaust survivor. I want to state that Mr. Latson's statements in the email to the parent of a Jewish student constitute a violation of Florida Statute 1000.5. This is an example of modern anti-Semitism pursuant to the statute. Further, Mr. Latson's statements as a school principal, public school principal, violate state and federal civil rights laws. Finally, Mr. Latson, in his emails, admitted that he was legislating from the principal's office when he violated Florida Statute 1003.42, which mandates that all public school students in Florida receive Holocaust education. Please do the right thing and rescind Mr. Latson's reinstatement and appeal the administrative judge's order. Thank you.
My name is Lauren Gross, and I'm the director of the Gross Family Center for the Study of Anti-Semitism and the Holocaust. I can't say the Holocaust is a factual event. Mr. Latson's remarks are a shocking desecration of 6 million souls who were savagely exterminated for committing the crime of being Jewish. 6 million. That's the equivalent of murdering the combined populations of Washington, Vermont, Wyoming, Alaska, North Dakota, Delaware, and Rhode Island. 1.5 million children. That's the equivalent of 25 football stadiums filled with dead children. An 11th hour apology does not erase his sacrilegious profanity in the face of all who perished in so brutal a fashion. Should you vote to retain Mr. Latson, his job should entail driving Holocaust survivors to our 23 high schools and listening to them tell students about their inhuman histories of torture and personal agonies. Maybe that would eradicate his doubt.
I'm sorry. Michael Hoffman, Michael Moses, Mark Pintel.
Good morning. My name is Michael Hoffman, President and CEO of the Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County. As the largest Jewish nonprofit in this county that represents thousands, I stand here to implore this board to rescind the rehiring of Dr. Latson. This past year, the school board and the Jewish Federation have reaffirmed a shared commitment to implement the Holocaust education state mandate in this county, but that is not enough. No one, especially an individual in a position of authority in an educational setting, can deny the undeniable, nor should there be any ambiguity in the condemnation of acts of hatred, bigotry, and anti-Semitism, and anyone who does not reflect the values and educational efficacy of historical fact that I know this school board exemplifies must be held accountable. The decision reached today will set precedent for future acts of hatred, bigotry, and anti-Semitism. On behalf of the Palm Beach Jewish community, I call on this board to act responsibly.
Mark Hopen, Stephen Allenbick, Rabbi Leonard Feldman.
Good morning. I think we know a fact. If what Principal Latson said about slavery, this wouldn't even be an issue. He'd be fired, and it wouldn't even be reconsidered for rehiring. So why is the Holocaust any different? I ask you, do not give this man a penny. This is an outrage. Anti-Semitism and a war on Jews is not allowed. The school board is opening itself to potential multi-million-dollar lawsuits if they follow through and give this guy his job back. I will volunteer myself as a person to teach Holocaust education for free, help the high school, middle school, or the elementary school, whatever you need. But please, the Holocaust matters, and you have a big Jewish contingency. So thank you.
What is your name, sir?
Mark Pintel.
Thank you.
I am Mark Hopen, the CEO of Albert Jewish Family Service. We are a human service agency helping hundreds of Holocaust survivors live out the remaining years of their lives in comfort and with dignity. I don't need to go to a museum to know the Holocaust is undeniable. I can visit survivors at their homes and by phone. I have files filled with their horror stories. Dr. Latson denied the Holocaust, believing the school district was a safe space for Holocaust denial and anti-Semitism. During the Holocaust, the people of Europe were quiet when they witnessed anti-Semitism. After the Holocaust, we pledged to never again remain silent. You must speak loudly and let Dr. Latson, all employees, and all students and families know that there is no safe space for Holocaust denial and anti-Semitism in our school district. Our children and the Holocaust survivors of Albert Jewish Family Service are watching. Please do what is right. Please rescind the rehiring. Thank you.
Do I have to keep the face mask on? My name is Stephen Alembic. This is from Auschwitz, from the Hall of Names. My family's name is everywhere seen, here and there. The Holocaust is a fact. The millions that died are a fact. Anti-Semitism being rampant in Palm Beach County school system, that too is unfortunately a fact. I'm a baby boomer, and I was taught real, not revisionist history. The attempts by the textbook publishers to change the way America thinks has been an ongoing process for over 5 decades, yet the truth remains. To be a Holocaust denier puts that person at the farthest side of anti-Semitism that I can imagine. My 3 girls are either in the school system now or have gone through it. My oldest one put up with taunts on a daily basis with "Jew, get back in the oven" at the Boca Raton High School. This is ongoing, and it has not stopped. The president issued an executive order. That's just not enough. Presenting anti-Semitism as a Jewish problem has been a lose-lose proposition because it has not spurred anyone to take meaningful action against it. Now is the time. And I look at you and I say, not then, not now, then when, and if not you, then who?
Todd Cohn, Lauren Milstein, Ann Hirsch.
My name is Leonard Feldman. I'm the rabbi of Temple Bethel in West Palm Beach. I have been a resident of Palm Beach County for 32 years. This has become my home after I left the former Soviet Union, where I was beaten and mistreated, and abused. And I never thought that right here in Palm Beach, we would even have this kind of a hearing. The chairman said that the number of comments that this case has received has been larger than ever in history. Well, this is a historic event, and this will be a stain in the history of Palm Beach County. I was 9 years old when my mother died at the age of 38 of a very rare disease. And all the doctors said it's because of the trauma of witnessing 47 members of her family being murdered, shot, and buried alive. And I say, never again. We should be embarrassed to even have a man like this in any way connected to education of children. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Lawrence Milstein, Palm Beach County Director for the American Jewish Committee, AJC. In a groundbreaking survey released by AJC last week, nearly 1/4 of U.S. adults reported not knowing much or anything about the Holocaust. Nearly half did not even know what anti-Semitism is. As a member of the Holocaust Education Task Force, I know firsthand that this district is fully committed to implementing our state's Holocaust education mandate. However, our students also deserve educators fully committed to teaching the Holocaust as historical fact, period, without equivocation, without years of contemplation. It is, after all, the most documented genocide in history. By rescinding your October 7 vote, the board will send a clear message to our community and to the nation that it firmly rejects Holocaust denial and that Holocaust education is indeed a critical component of our curriculum. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you to the board for the opportunity to speak. My name is Todd Cohn, and I'm the Regional Director for NCSY that oversees a network of Jewish student union clubs in over 60 area schools. Between 1940 and 1945, 6 million Jews were murdered in the Holocaust, including over 1.1 million in Auschwitz. In a 2018 study, 66% of millennials could not identify Auschwitz. 2 years ago, Mr. Latson claimed, "I can't say the Holocaust is a factual, historical event." There's no place for such an individual in our educational system. His rehiring must be rescinded. JSU teaches about Jewish culture, leadership, Israel, and the Holocaust to all teens of all faiths. This year, we are committed to offering every school, every teacher, every student in Florida free Holocaust education programming, including virtual tours of Auschwitz and conversations with Holocaust survivors, because building an inclusive and tolerant society isn't just an educational issue, but a moral one. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Ann Hirsch, and I am the child of Holocaust survivors. This hearing is not about Dr. Latson. He's already outed himself. We know he's anti-Semitic just by the fact that he questioned the Holocaust. This is really a hearing about you people, what you are going to do, your responsibility in this. That's what this is about. Judge Cohen had absolutely no right to come to his decision because Florida is an at-will state, which means if Dr. Latson walked into this place and his shoelaces weren't tied the way you liked it, he can be fired without cause. He gave you enough cause. And if you look at your chart, it says students, parents, and community above the board. You serve at our will. We don't want him. He has no place in the educational system, period. Do the right thing. Thank you.
Michael Bass, Janet Nebel, and Yale Hamo. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your last name. Yale, please come up.
Good morning. My name is Janet Nebel, and I stand here before you as the daughter of a Holocaust survivor. My father, Gerhard Nebel, Buchenwald prisoner number 27874, was sent to that concentration camp, I have to catch my breath, on November 10th, 1938, after Kristallnacht, and released on January 4th, 1939. Shortly thereafter, he left for Denmark, eventually hoping to emigrate to Palestine. That did not happen. He was again arrested by the Nazis and transported to Theresienstadt on October 5th, 1943. He is one of the Danish Jews who survived Theresienstadt. His mother and stepfather were killed in Auschwitz. Today, remaining Holocaust survivors and their children, like my sisters and me, strongly believe that future generations need to be educated about this dark period in our history so that these atrocities will never be repeated or denied. Thank you.
My name is Yael Hamawi, and I am a senior at Olympic Heights. I'm currently missing calculus class to stand as a representative for my peers. Understand that my words are not only my own. I've heard them mirrored by the youth community, Jews and non-Jews alike. Anti-Semitism in schools, both in the form of Holocaust denial and otherwise, is a real problem that I myself have faced. Please listen to the public, who are expressing their determined opposition to rehiring William Latson in any capacity. By rehiring him, you risk alienating the students of Spanish River who have expressed their fear at the prospects of Latson's rehiring, as well as those of other high schools who see the precedent you set. If you decide to rehire him, you send a dangerous message that Holocaust denial and equivocation is a viable position. Will you validate the anti-Semitism directed towards me and my peers? I can't believe you're even considering it. Please don't let this happen. Don't let us down. Thank you.
Michelle Terrace, Sophia Manolesco, Regina Collins.
I speak for the 6 million Jews who had no voice. If a principal is approached by a parent whose child has been the target of racist comments, they plead with principal to educate students about racism and hate, and principal refuses to do this and says, I can't say slavery is a factual historical event because I'm not in a position to do so as a school district employee. There'd be no reinstatement hearing and no call to action. The principal would have been fired immediately. Why are racists viewed as evil, but anti-Semites are nice people that just don't understand? There's a refusal to educate students about the Holocaust. There's an agenda to revise, minimize, and erase it from history. Holocaust denial is anti-Semitism, and anti-Semitism is hate. My name's Michelle Terrace, founder of Jexit, a nonprofit educational organization. We don't believe in cancel culture. He's only sorry he got caught and how it's affected his life. His remarks have dangerous ripples in our country. William Latson's lost the confidence of the students and community. Therefore, we wholeheartedly condemn his reinstatement. William Latson cannot rewrite history. Never again is now.
Hello, good morning. My name is Sophia Manolesco. I'm also with Jexit. We're an organization that educates people about anti-Semitism. I escaped the Socialist Republic of Romania when I was 11 years old with the clothes on my back. And now I know about persecution, and I know about how erasing history serves certain parts of the government to control the people. It's a shame that we are here in the twilight zone having to actually consider reinstating someone who engaged in an aggressive form of anti-Semitism. Denying the Holocaust is an aggressive form of anti-Semitism, and Jewish children deserve to be safe and grow up in a safe environment. And just like we learn about the hardships of the Native Americans and the hardships of the African Americans, we cannot deny Jewish children their history. And it's very dangerous to reinstate this person and to give him responsibility to watch over our children. It is wrong, and I can't believe that we're even here discussing this. Thank you.
My name is Gina Collins.
I grew up in Farmingdale, New Jersey. Everyone my parents knew were Holocaust survivors like themselves. I remember as a young child seeing a number tattooed on a woman's forearm and was very puzzled. My parents lost their entire family. My father, his first wife and children, my mother, her 7 siblings, and father, her mother had died before the war. One thing my mother did tell me when the camp was liberated, she was on death's door, but she witnessed many people dying on the spot when they ate too much too fast. In closing, I'd like to say as a society, we cannot deny this historical event. All future generations must know what happened about this genocide, and it must never happen again.
Bill Callahan, Erica Wald, Paul Gross.
I'm Bill Callahan. I serve at Christ Fellowship Church. My ministry fights anti-Semitism with Stand With Us and Christian Women for Israel. As liaison for International Christian Embassy Jerusalem, I have trained in Holocaust education at Yad Vashem. Yad Vashem, Israel's Holocaust Memorial, records and memorializes the over 27,000 Christians who courageously stepped forward to save Jewish lives. More died trying. As a Christian, I want to step forward today to speak against Holocaust denial and to remind you of 2 important facts. 1.5 million children were murdered in the Holocaust, and to refute this fact is to kill them again. Just 2 years ago, 11 people were murdered by an anti-Semite at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. Hate still exists in America. It's incumbent on our schools to teach the truth and to advocate for kindness and decency. You are in a position to do so. To allow anyone who denies the Holocaust to be associated with our children is a dereliction of your duty. Learn from history, be strong, and courageously step forward to expel Holocaust deniers. Thank you.
Kate Weingart, Chad Walker, Dr. Steve Gerzoff.
My name is Erica Wald, and both my parents were Holocaust survivors. The rest of my family perished in the death camps. My father was comatose when the Allies found him, and my mother was prisoner number A42316. The A standing for Auschwitz. My mother survived the Auschwitz death march, which at the end of the war was designed to murder the remaining survivors without ammunition because they wanted to silence the German story that what happened there. A few survived, and they told the world what happened there. When we escaped Hungary, we were welcomed by Americans who told us they were so sorry what happened to us and what happened by the Germans because they did not know. If you excuse this education, is the educator of our children, a principal whose statutory duty was to know, then you are perpetrating in the future the I did not know excuse, which led to the murder of my family. Don't ever let them say again, I didn't know.
My name is Paul Gross. I'm the co-founder of the Gross Family Center for the Study of the Holocaust and Anti-Semitism, approximately 30 years ago. We, as the Gross Center, have focused on educating children, educating teachers how to teach the Holocaust, as well as the general public. Today, you've heard words over and over again, and you've gotten over 1,000 responses from the community, both Jewish and Gentile. I'm going to take the last 30 seconds to ask you for complete silence in memory of the 6 million dead. Thank you.
My name is Kate Weingart, and I'm a retired professor emeritus from Purdue University. And I have to say it's so disheartening when I come to a state that mandates Holocaust education, that we have an educational leader that equivocates. And it's clear, I agree with everything that's been said here. Never again means that there should be no Holocaust deniers employed in this state and in this district. Progressive discipline also gives you the right to fire someone immediately when they do something so egregious. Faculty, staff, and students in this day and age, we need to learn how to differentiate between propaganda and falsehood and fact. And if educators don't know how to do that, they need to learn. They need to learn what is verifiable information. And the Holocaust is verified. It's been verified over and over. And that an educator equivocates on this, it raises a lot of concerns about the amount of hate and anti-Semitism that is in our society. And it's very concerning. Thank you.
After this next gentleman, Kate Weingart, Chad Walker, Dr. Steve Gerzoff.
Good morning. I'm Chad Walker, here today representing the youth in reference to the systematic murder of millions. Close your eyes. In your worst nightmare, can you even picture this? Families put into cattle cars, leading to their unknown. Children being ripped from their parents' arms. Can you hear the screams from those in the gas chambers, never to be seen again? This has echoed throughout modern history and is now the subject of this very moment. Having worked with rabbis in public schools to raise awareness for the Holocaust, I have come to realize that education is the leading preventative measure in ensuring this never occurs again. Honored to speak with survivors and hearing stories passed down in my own family, I realize the emotional and physical scars are irreversible. Working with my local high school, we created its first Holocaust class, a historical study taught by Rachel Pignato, whose efforts will remain abundant in the minds of the youth. Without a doubt, this genocide took place, cannot be denied, and must be used as a lesson against hate. Thank you.
After this gentleman, Judy Markowitz, Meyer Rappaport, and Rabbi Lieb Azadjui.
Good morning. My name is Steve Gerzoff. I'm from a survivor family who fought with the partisans. I'm a teacher, a doctor, a professor at Tufts Medical School, and a Palm Beach County resident. On liberating Buchenwald, Eisenhower predicted that someday some bastard will get up and say that this never happened. Well, Eisenhower predicted our principle. You heard his apology today. It is late and ludicrous. He said, quote, "The district has an exemplary Holocaust education curriculum." It does not. And he said that it was taught to all students without exception. It was not. And so what? As if he deserved any shred of personal honor or political credit for it. If it really were so great, he probably wouldn't be a denier himself. His lame attempt to claim otherwise by association with that program is dishonest, deceptive, and insulting. In Germany, they call Holocaust denial flat-out anti-Semitism, and they prosecute it as a crime. Their deniers get 5 years in jail, not job loss.
My name is Mayor Rappaport, and that is my number. From Auschwitz, Blechame, Gross-Rosen, and Buchenwald. That's what they gave me, the number 184482. That's what we got there. And now, my ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I am standing in front of you here today for the 6 million for my whole family for my whole children, but they perished in the Holocaust. A whole family I lost. And I am the only reminder that you should remember what the Amalek did to us. I don't know how long I have years to be on this earth. Just as much I can, I will fight to eradicate the Holocaust, what happened. That you should remember, you are the judges, and the Almighty stands in front of you here right now, and He wants to see how you will judge. That should be remembered, that our children should get the proper education, that you should not deny them the truth. They have to live their lives. They have to know what is there good people on this world. Not only like Mr. Larson thinks. May God bless America. May God bless Israel, and never again.
Good morning. My name is Judy Markovich. My parents were both interned in concentration camps. I grew up hearing stories of the SS officer who promised safe passage to my father's family in exchange for all their valuables. Instead, he betrayed them to the Gestapo. They were all exterminated. I heard about cattle car transports, electrified barbed wire fences, standing outside in freezing temperatures for endless hours for head counts, grueling labor, near starvation, and death marches. My mother contracted encephalitis in Theresienstadt as a teenager. As a result, she developed early onset Parkinson's disease. She became totally incapacitated at age 52 and spent the last 16 years of her life in an institution, unable to perform the simplest tasks for herself, as her life was a living hell, trapped inside a non-responsive body. To deny the Holocaust is to deny history, documented in the countless records in print, on film, and in memory of the atrocities perpetrated by Nazi Germany. Never again.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been asked to remind all of you to please, I guess they're concerned about the virus and the touching the podium, so please keep your masks on when you speak to us.
My name is Rabbi Leib Zagwi. I'm one of the rabbis at the Jewish Community Synagogue. I was born and raised here in North Palm Beach in Florida. We are at a turning point in history with a historic elections going on tonight. This is also a historic vote going on here in the school board. On January 1942, when 15 high-ranking Nazi officials got together to decide how to get rid of the Jewish problem, they came to the conclusion that gassing the Jews would be the cheapest way to go. And they tried to hide it, and they tried to keep it quiet. But when news started going out to the Allied government, they turned a blind eye, and they didn't want to believe that this was actually going on. The outcome was 6 million Jews. The government officials then may have had an excuse, but today there is no excuse. Anti-Semitism is on rise at every corner. We are at our turning point in history. The story of William Latson gripped not only this county, but the world as a whole. The decision here will go down in history and will always be remembered. The names of this board will be remembered in history as either those that turned to the right or as those that turned a blind eye. Please make the right decision and for this county and for the entire world as a whole.
Rabbi Shlomo, I cannot pronounce the last name, E-R-A-G-U-I, Lori Cardoza-Moore, and Tammy. Board Clerk, are those on the back also? Okay, all right. And Laura Cardoza-Moore. Rabbi, go, either one of you.
My name is Laurie Cardozo-Moore. I'm president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, and our mission is to educate Christians to stand against the rise of global anti-Semitism. I also serve as a UN envoy, and I represent the World Council of Independent Christian Churches, and my focus there is anti-Semitism at the UN as well. I am calling on the Palm Beach County Board to refrain from reinstating former Spanish River High School principal William Latson for stating, "I can't say the Holocaust is a factual historical event," because I am not in a position to do so as a school district employee. I am petitioning Florida's Attorney General to launch an investigation to determine if the Jewish students' civil rights were violated by Latson by this comment, or Palm Beach County schools by their actions or inactions when considering this comment and its import. A violation under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of '64 occurs when the education institution fails to promptly and adequately respond to a complaint, or if the complaint is ignored by the administration. And Stan Moore is willing to defer his minute. The U.S. State Department and the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights adopted the International Working Definition of Anti-Semitism to include incidents such as, or similar to, accusing the Jews as a people or Israel of inventing or exaggerating the Holocaust. Additionally, by instilling fear in the Jewish students by his comment that he is unable to affirm that the Holocaust is a factual historical event, Latson is clearly in violation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I am a former student of Palm Beach County Schools. I am outraged that this is actually going on. And as the leader of a Christian organization, I'm asking you, please do not reinstate Latson. He made a decision, and he has to live with the consequence of his choice. Thank you very much.
I need to begin by saying, good idea. I should have thought about that. Line up a couple of people for another extra couple of minutes. Anyways, okay. My name is Rabbi Shlomo Ezagui. I've been living here for 33 years in Palm Beach County. I run a school. I have a summer camp, day camp. I write on quantum physics and spirituality and Jewish law, Maimonides. And as mentioned already many times, thousands of people have called. This is a national, worldwide consideration that you fellows have before you. This is nothing small at all. I'm not going to mention that my grandparents, all their relatives, died in Ukraine and as a result of the Holocaust in World War II. I'll start by saying that in the Talmud it's written, Butzin, Butzin, Mekatfa Yediyah. From the little drops that come out of the pumpkin, you know whether it's sweet or not. Not only did it come at one time, but he reiterated it again to the parent that he cannot confirm or deny whether there was a Holocaust or not. The apology is absolutely not sincere. He just cares to have the law considered, and that's all that matters for him. If somebody came today and said there's no sun shining outside, and some people will deny that, or Elvis is still alive, we'd think he's incompetent. The man is incompetent, does not deserve the position of educating children and the future generations. Besides the fact, the Holocaust, which is such a serious issue in itself. Thank you, and I hope you will take this consideration extremely seriously for what it represents, not to him and his job, but to the children and to the future of this county and the world that we are living in. Thank you.
Board members, that's the end of the comments from the public. At this point, we can go back to BRD 2. Mrs. Whitfield?
I was just going to ask if we could do our comments now. Is that okay?
Go ahead. Mrs. McQuinn, if you have anything else you'd like to say. I apologize for cutting you off. The attorneys have told me that we need to stay on a strict protocol to make sure that the comments are in the right place on the agenda. So I was just trying to do that. So I apologize to you. I know you've had a lot of concerns, and I apologize for that. If you have anything else you'd like to say.
Thank you, Chair Barbieri. One of the reasons that I have supported your chairmanship over the last couple of years is because I know you try to follow the rules. You raise your hand if you can't hear me through the mask, because remember the rule follower? You guys were reminded to wear masks. I'm not going to take my mask off either, unless you cannot hear me clearly. I'd like to thank you, Chair Barbieri. I know that you are trying. I know that you're trying very hard to keep us in line. I'd like to wait now and hear my colleagues, but please let me come back at the end. Thank you.
Absolutely. Mrs. Whitfield?
Thank you so much. While I was reading the trial transcripts, I saw my own words in a text to Mr. Oswald used. I think that these words from 2 years ago still stand. I wrote to Mr. Oswald as this matter was unfolding that it is a shame. This whole situation is a shame. I'm sad for what this has done to Dr. Latson, but I am more sad for the perception that this community currently has of the district. In the beginning of this issue, the district threw our full weight behind Dr. Latson. I specifically remember during my conversation with Mr. Oswald telling him to please help Dr. Latson fix this mistake. We as a district do not want to lose good leaders, especially long-standing principals of very successful schools. And the reality is that Spanish River was a model of great Holocaust education in the district. The truth of this situation, however, doesn't stop there. It goes on to include Dr. Latson being told of his mistake, and instead of apologizing, he doubles down. He continues to say that he is right, and the community is in an uproar, and the district is in chaos, and he can't even make sure he gets in touch with the person trying to handle all of this, the deputy superintendent who repeatedly asked for a phone call back. And let's be clear, also in the trial transcript, they point out that I was in Mexico when all this happened. And Mr. Oswald also called me and texted me. And I also had connection difficulties. And I was also on vacation with my family. And in less than 1 hour, I found a place to get a signal and called him back because I realized that in these positions of administration, it comes with the territory. I am not saying that every administrator has to do that. But if you are an administrator whose actions have caused the level of turmoil that Dr. Latson caused in July of 2019, the least you can do is return a phone call when the deputy superintendent asks. When Dr. Latson heard the message that he had been reassigned, he understandably wanted to say goodbye to his staff. Instead of speaking with his supervisor about this or anything, and with no regard for the directive that he'd been given not to communicate on this issue, he crafted an email on his own. He included in there all of the appropriate goodbye information that one normally would, but he did not stop there. He continued to have bad judgment when he wrote that this was all the fault of the parent, still not owning his mistakes. To me, this has always been the moment when, to use legal terminology, we had just cause, and I believed he participated in misconduct in office. I have cited throughout my notes, which I brought, and I can actually pass out to the rest of the board as well, the many reasons why I believe the ALJ got this ruling wrong. I have itemized page numbers and text as we were instructed, but here is my overarching final thought on this matter. The district has been around for 100 years, well before any of us were born. It will continue without us. We only hold these seats to continue to provide this service to the community. We are not guaranteed jobs, and when our work hurts the district more than we help it, we need to gracefully bow out to the next leaders that come in and continue to advance the district. I do not want to keep Dr. Latson here because I believe that his continued service to Palm Beach County Schools is hurting our ability to teach children, which is the job of the district. And his comments, whether he intended them to be taken the way that they were, have hurt this community and their faith in their public school system. I have lost his faith in his ability to lead, and I want this to end today. Thank you.
Ms. Brill.
Thank you, and I am taking off my mask because I want to be heard loud and clear. I made my position abundantly clear at our last meeting when I rejected the judge's recommended order. Today, I want to thank the over 1,000 people who came to speak to us, recorded messages for us, or have reached out to us by email expressing their opinions and outrage. I especially want to take a moment to acknowledge and thank the Holocaust survivors and children of survivors who shared their stories. To my colleagues, I know it was painful to listen for hours to the speakers and read the endless stream of email messages. Just imagine what it is like to live every day of your life recalling the atrocities of the Holocaust. Imagine hearing the stories about how your family members perished. I don't think any of you understood how deeply personal this is to the Jewish community, the largest group targeted for genocide in the Holocaust. We say, never again. We shall never forget. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that the administrative law judge made errors in his recommended order, mistakes that we can correct, mistakes that we will discuss. I have compiled my analysis of the recommended order, but I will reserve those remarks until after we vote on the motion. The actions of this school board today will become our legacy. Worldwide attention is focused on us. I implore all of you to vote your conscience and do the right thing. That is our job. That is what we were elected to do. I support rescinding the vote taken on at the October 7 meeting. I do so once again on behalf of the millions of people who died in the Holocaust. I thank our board chairman, Mr. Barbieri, for allowing my colleagues to reconsider their vote, and Mrs. McQuinn for her impassioned remarks. The eyes of the world are upon us. Do the right thing. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mrs. Andrews.
Thank you, and good morning to everyone. Before I say anything, I want you all in here, at the tone of my voice, through the televisions, I will rescind my vote today. I will rescind my vote today. But let me give you some background on what I've been doing since October the 7th. I want to thank the legal department because I called them after the October 7th meeting, and I wanted to find out right then how I could rescind my vote. And at that time, I was told a lot of different things as to whether I could do it or could not do it. And I kept asking, it should be able to be done. I'm a board member. I want to rescind my vote. I want all the documents, all these documents that I've been carrying around, all these documents from the transcripts that I've been reading over the last few weeks that were presented to me. It told me something. It told me that as a school board, we missed the point a long time ago in getting this right. I voted the first time to terminate Mr. Latson based on the superintendent's recommendation before I had a chance to read all of this. And then I did respect the administrative law judge as well as the superintendent's recommendation. And I said, well, let me look at it. It was just a little packet of information. The final order from the judge, as well as what our attorney that we paid almost $100,000 to represent us, to bring us back information, to try to make the best decision. But I felt so unhappy with all of the calls that I had received, the basic information that I had received from the district, that I really wanted to take my time and act as a quasi-lawyer and judge for myself as to what the administrative law judge did, what the attorney did on our behalf that was hired by the school board that I never met, that I never had a chance to talk about it in private session as to what was going on in reference to this case. I think never again in Palm Beach County School District should we ever be in a situation like this where this problem isn't taken care of at the administrative level. That's who our leaders are. When I heard about this whole incident, I was on the side of the road traveling in my district, going to visit a school. I called Dr. Fanoy. And I asked him, I heard this on the news, what's going on? He says, Ms. Andrews, I don't know any more than you know. That's 2 years out from when this thing started. That's pretty bad for Palm Beach County School District. And as a board member, I felt really awful that this was going on. And here we are today, almost 3 years in the making or more, still trying to fix it. Well, I rescind my vote today, and we're going to fix this today,
And I will remember that we will never let this happen again here in Palm Beach County School District. 40 plus years of my life has been spent here, and I've never sat in something like this. I heard your calls. I heard your voices. And I know, I'm an African American person. I know about slavery. I know about anti-Semitic. I know about racism and people doing the right thing. What was so upsetting to me with Mr. Latson, but he tripled down after the vote that we gave him just a few weeks ago. I pick up my morning paper, and he's tripled down, or somebody in his organization tripled down and say we didn't do anything wrong. When I look at these statements that I see from my fellow board members, and I have mine here, after I did my own investigating, we made a lot of mistakes as a school board in letting this go on and on and on again. The judge made mistakes. Our attorney could have been a lot more forceful in this process as I read these papers. And then when I look at our school board policy 3.02, it says to take responsibility and accountability for his or her acts or omissions. It was a bad thing for him to do those emails in April 2018, and then to double back down and blame the parent. You've heard it all here. I don't have to keep repeating it. But that's where he broke the policy of the school board right then, and not taking ownership for the problems that he had done. Just to say, I'm sorry. I want to learn. I want to do better. I made a mistake. But the triple down of this badness, this anti-Semitic thought process that he had, it was very disturbing to me. And his obligation was to protect our students. As I read through this paperwork, I hope I can go on, Mr. Barbieri, I saw that opt-out in there. And yeah, they said they didn't have an opt-out at Spanish River, but yes, they did. For the Holocaust deniers. It was probably unofficial, but some letter went out through this reading that I did to let parents know when it was going to happen. So if they didn't want to let their children learn the facts, if their children didn't want to learn, they could stay home playing that game. That was a bad game that was being played by the school district. Right then and there, something should have been done. Something should have been done by people who get paid every day to monitor and make sure we help our leaders do the right thing. And then our Rule 6A 5.056 defines incompetency as inefficiency, one or more of the following things: failure to perform your duties prescribed by law, and that unofficial opt-out was one of them. Misconduct in office, a violation of adopted school board rules that he was supposed to teach, to make sure his teachers presented the factual information. For him to say that he couldn't believe it was a fact, and he had been employed in the school district for 26 years, something should have just jumped out at all of us to stop this way back in 2018. In 2018, we could have stopped this. And here we are getting ready to go into 2021, and we're dealing with this foolishness. I'm just truly embarrassed and upset about how it was handled inside this administration, and the mistakes I made by following the decisions made by the administrative law judge and the superintendent's recommendation, and an attorney we paid almost $100,000 to. And I've been spending my life over the last 3 weeks reading and reading and reading to try to come up with a decision. And I knew when I left here and I voted to reinstate him that I had to do something about it. And there were so many firewalls. You can't talk to this person. You can't talk to that person. I done paid $100,000 to an attorney I can't talk to. I thank this attorney, Biazzo Law Firm, that sent me some information about what we could do. It's obvious we could have done a lot of things, and I didn't pay him a penny from the school district of Palm Beach County. And he told me, Ms. Andrews, it can be done, and I'll help you through the way without offering anything for money. So when we talk about this today, we made some mistakes. We got to clean it up. I appreciate you, Ms. McQuinn, because I know you, and we've been in this district for a long time. We love our principals. and we love our administrators. But when we make a mistake, we have to own it, fix it, and never let it happen again. This to the children of Palm Beach County. I too tell you, I apologize that this happened at your school, but we cannot let this happen at any other school again. And we must do the right thing. And for Mr. Latson, you did what you did. You had a whole lot of time to say you were sorry. But when you trickle down to me, and I'm reading about this, after I'm trying to look at the big picture, and then when I read the bumble and fumbling of the administration here in this district and all this foolishness, this school board will stop it today. And we will stop it with my rescinding my vote. Thank you.
Dr. Robinson, before you start, our technical people say the YouTube signal is not strong. So I'm advising everyone that it's being broadcast live on Comcast 234 and 235 and the Palm Beach County Government Channel 20 and AT&T UVerse 99. This is also being recorded. This meeting will be posted on the district board page after the meeting. Go ahead, Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. Well, this is truly a multifaceted issue. I'm going to speak really to one component, the emotions and the feelings. If this board votes to rescind the prior vote, there'll be a different time for me to discuss the facts. So I think I'm mad at almost everybody involved in this, some more than others, but it'll do no good for me to list that now. And I'm also very conscious of the fact that we will likely end up in additional litigation. So I'm going to try to stay focused on my written comments so I don't get subpoenaed, actually. So let me just say this. At the moment of my conception, it was known that I would be human, that I would be Black. It was not known that I would become a physician, a wife, a mother, a school board member, or an attorney in my own mind. So I'm going to speak from my original self. A few weeks ago, I spoke to a Jewish gentleman who raised his voice, who spoke with great emotion and cried as he expressed his feelings about what he thought was true about this whole situation. There's a lot of things that have been said that are not true, but I heard his pain and I connected to it. I did not respond as my best self, but I emailed an apology to him later that day after I had done some internal reflection. What I connect to in his pain is caused by the denial of his history. I relate so well because my history continues to be denied. In fact, my reality is denied, even when events are captured on video, even when the data shows that we deny opportunity to Black children in Palm Beach County School District and throughout the country. So that pain, I know, and I know it's real. The same decades-old law that mandates Holocaust education also mandates that we teach the history of other people, including my history. How many Black students would have higher expectations of self and work harder if they knew about the ancient African kingdoms? How many Black students would go to medical school if they knew about Imhotep? Would the expectations that teachers have for Black students be higher if they knew our history prior to enslavement? If they knew our enormous part of making this country and this world outstanding? Even though this country has never lived up to its promise to us. What if we all knew that my history is way, 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 way more than enslavement, M.L. King, and the false stories about Rosa Parks? So I've given Black history facts at board meetings for years, and I was criticized by some of the same people who claim outrage over this issue. I was called a racist for uplifting my story and my reality. So I relate to your pain. When they deny your history, when they deny your language, they try to deny your existence. They try to ignore your reality. So I am not mad at the Jewish community for standing up and saying, remember and see me. Because I've been saying it, the same thing, over and over and over again. Now, my children taught me what they learned about the Holocaust when they were in Palm Beach County schools. This was on top of the little bit that I learned growing up. But you know, until this, I really did not process that Holocaust denial was a real thing. That kind of boggles my mind. So let me say now that I am sorry for the pain that my actions, that my vote contributed to. I would not wish that pain on anyone. It is certainly not my intention to cause a flare-up of your pain. It is my mission and my prayer that in the near future, all of our stories will be taught to all children as a matter of routine, as a matter of respect. And maybe one day, our pain, individually and collectively, will be healed. Thank you.
Vice Chairman Shaw, do you have some comments you'd like to make?
Yes, sorry about that. The phone rang right in the middle of that. Thank you very much. My apologies to everybody for not being there today, but I'm here out of an abundance of caution because I had a couple relatives, my family, that I had not been in direct contact with, test positive for COVID. So I thought that it was important for me to be in a position not to be at the meeting. But the comments that Mrs. McQuinn made, I think certainly reflect the original thoughts that I had on this one. And I'm going to deal with it as professionally as I can to explain where I was then and where I am now. And essentially, it's a couple of issues. The first one was that when that administrative law judge issued his order, it appeared that we had very little opportunity to do anything except an order. And since that was pending litigation, that was driving my decision for another reason that no one has talked about yet. And that's the fact that the district had submitted a case to the Professional Practices Commission for a review of Dr. Latson's certificate. And information that I had received all along during this entire process indicated that the state would not address a case related to certification and the revocation of certification if there was pending litigation. So I made a calculated guess that if we settled this and had no pending litigation, then the state would begin that investigation. And to some degree, I was right, because I think 2 days after we made our decision, the Commissioner of Education did direct the state to continue with that investigation. And I was hoping that that would end it with the revocation of a certificate. There's no question in my mind that when this happened, and the issues that happened with Dr. Latson were things that certainly justify a review by the state to revoke his certification. And I had full intentions, and I had shared it with district staff, that regardless of what decision was made, there was no way that I would ever vote for a recommendation to actually reinstate him in a position. I don't care what it was. I wasn't going to vote for any reinstatement. So for that, I apologize to everybody because my calculated guess really didn't pan out. But today, I think we're back in the position that, first of all, my parents fought in World War II. Uncles of mine fought in World War II. My mother was a nurse who was at Normandy and the invasion of Normandy. I've had numerous years of conversations with people in the Jewish community, and probably the most memorable one was with a lady by the name of Ava Moses Kaur, who was a survivor. She and her sister were in concentration camp, and her sister was a victim of the children's experiments with Dr. Mengele. And we had a chance to sit and talk for almost a half an hour after a presentation she made. So there is no question in my mind how atrocious it was that Dr. Latson didn't try to resolve this issue when he had the opportunity, because it is something that is not deniable. There is no way that anybody could even begin to think this was the case. I'll vote to rescind my vote based upon the following issues. Number one is the superintendent of schools has the sole and absolute authority to place and remove and transfer principals at his discretion. The second, and Mrs. McQuinn talked a little bit about that, is the issue of progressive discipline. We do not have a progressive discipline policy for administrators. And I think that that was a finding that the judge was wrong on. And if we have an expectation for progressive discipline, in my mind, and I'm not an attorney, I think it was very clear that we had followed progressive discipline with Dr. Latson from the beginning. When the first meetings were held where he was counseled by the area superintendent, there were some meetings that were held with local rabbis. There were training activities. There was a visit he made to the Holocaust Museum. There were interventions made, and that would be at the lowest level of progressive discipline. The second level of discipline was when Dr. Latson was approached about a voluntary transfer out of his school. That's a little bit higher in that level of progressive discipline. When he rejected that one, he was told he would be involuntary transferred. That is another level of progressive discipline. And then we ended up at the conclusion of this whole thing when Dr. Latson intentionally and I think unprofessionally was insubordinate in dealing with his area superintendent, with the deputy superintendent, with district staff, and when he was directed to do things, didn't do it. So that was, in my mind, that totally justified the superintendent's recommendation for firing him, which I voted for when it first came to the board. I also believe that in no way would any principal in this county have failed to respond to one of their supervisors in the way that this response did not happen. And for those reasons, I really honestly expected that administrative law judge to have simply said, yes, you were right, the superintendent had the right to make that decision, and we wouldn't even be here today. But unfortunately, because of a lot of missteps that happened along the way, we're in a position now that we have to deal with this. But enough is enough. I am absolutely not in favor of Dr. Latson being in a position. I hope that the state will continue its investigation and take action. And I don't believe that any principal or teacher in this county needs to feel any, maybe I need to reword this, no principal or teacher in this county should be in a position to feel that their efforts to educate students on the Holocaust and the district's efforts are things that are being neglected, because we have a lot of principals and a lot of teachers who are very sincere, very professional, and very active in doing the right thing. It is a shame, and I certainly apologize to everybody who was hurt in this. I had no idea in this world that an administrative law judge would not have seen this the same way that the district did. But we have an obligation to move this thing forward, and I will be voting to rescind the vote that we took before. Thank you very much.
Ms. McQuinn, you were reaching for your microphone. Did you have something else you wanted to add?
Are we ready for the end of my comments? Or, oh, you're going to go first. I bet you have something to say.
I do.
Okay, go for it. Just don't forget me.
Never. I can't say the Holocaust is a factual, historical event because I'm not in a position to do so as a school district employee. That is the direct quote of Dr. William Latson. And I find it repugnant and absolutely unacceptable that a principal in one of our schools would use his employment with the Palm Beach County School District as a reason, no, as an excuse for this absurd statement. Dr. Latson is a long-standing administrator with years of experience in complying with both the statutory requirements governing public education, as well as school board policies, certainly should have known that it was outrageous for him to claim his employment as an employee precluded him from confirming the Holocaust to be a factual, historical event. Not only did Dr. Latson make that claim in 2018, but as has been pointed out by a couple of my colleagues, he not only doubled down on it, but he tripled down on it since he first made the statements in 2018. Section 1003.42 sub 2 of Florida statutes provides, in part, that members of the instructional staff of the public schools, subject to the rules of the State Board of Education and the District School Board, shall teach efficiently and faithfully the history of the Holocaust, the systematic, planned annihilation of European Jews and other groups by Nazi Germany, a watershed event in the history of humanity, to be taught in a manner that leads to an investigation of human behavior, an understanding of the ramifications of prejudice, racism and stereotyping, and an examination of what it means to be a responsible and respectful person for the purposes of encouraging tolerance of diversity in a pluralistic society and for nurturing and protecting democratic values and institutions. School Board Policy 2.09 cites to the Florida statute requires the teaching of the Holocaust as a factual, historical event. In my opinion, and in light of both the Florida law and our school board policies, Dr. Latson's actions here arise not only to malfeasance by a public official, but incompetency, misconduct in office, and willful neglect of duties as defined in Rule 6B-4.009 of the Florida Administrative Code, and were grounds for his immediate dismissal back when he first made the statements in 2018. The administration should have dealt with it immediately and appropriately when it occurred in 2018. Despite all of that and the stain, as my colleague Ms. Brill accurately described, which Dr. Latson has by his malfeasance left on the district, which can never be removed and which has garnered not only local and national attention and ridicule, but has caused the international contempt and ridicule of this school district and this school board, we are not legally able, in this case, to discipline Dr. Latson for originally making the statement, as we have been advised by legal counsel that we must deal with only those findings of fact and conclusions of law set forth in the recommended order by the administrative law judge, which concern misconduct and the fallout from the statement, and not Dr. Latson's outrageous statement in and of itself. You know, I was criticized by some of the speakers prior to this meeting that I put this back on the agenda for rescission because of public pressure. I did not put this back on the agenda for public pressure. I put it on because I really didn't think some of my colleagues understood that this was a recommended order by the judge. It wasn't something we had to adopt as the final order. And there was lots of things in there, as Mr. Shaw pointed out, and some of you have pointed out, my colleagues have pointed out, that should have made the decision different than what it was. And I wanted to make sure that we got it back on the agenda so that as you all know, I have a background as an attorney, so I went through this, and so I want to lay out for you exactly why I put it back on for rescission. It wasn't because of public pressure; it's because of the facts and the missteps that the administrative law judge when he did the final order. Accordingly, on the advice of the General Counsel's Office, I want to draw your attention at this point to the recommended order in the Division of Administrative Hearings case number 19-6177, captioned Palm Beach County School Board versus William Latson, and the reasons why the previous vote of this board to accept the superintendent's recommendation that the board adopt the final order should be rescinded. There was misconduct in office, incompetence, and gross insubordination, and therefore just cause of discipline. The administrative law judge correctly stated in paragraph 71 that a principal may be dismissed for gross insubordination, and in paragraph 77 that gross insubordination is, quote, the intentional refusal to obey a direct order, reasonable in nature, and given by and with proper authority, misfeasance or malfeasance as to involve failure in the performance of required duties, end quote. Based on a review of the administrative law judge's recommended order, the board should first reject the administrative law judge's findings of fact and her conclusions of law in paragraph 77, that Dr. Latson, quote, showed less than diligent behavior under the circumstances of what was happening at home, and in his sporadic answering of telephone calls while vacationing in Jamaica, end quote, but that his, quote, actions did not rise to the level of gross insubordination, end quote, because these findings are not based upon competent substantial evidence. Competent substantial evidence is evidence that is sufficiently relevant and material that a reasonable mind might accept as adequate to support the conclusion reached. The administrative law judge found in paragraph 30, based on admissions by Dr. Latson, that Deputy Superintendent Keith Oswald requested Dr. Latson call him back by noon on July 8, 2019, that Dr. Latson would have to obey such a directive, and that Dr. Latson made no effort to communicate with Mr. Oswald before noon of July 18, 2019. The administrative law judge found in paragraphs 31 and 32 that Mr. Oswald called repeatedly and left messages, I'm quoting the judge, increasing with urgency on the morning of July 8, 2019. The administrative law judge also found in paragraph 33 that Dr. Latson placed 9 and received 4 telephone calls between 7:36 a.m. and noon on July 8, 2019, and he rejected Dr. Latson's explanations about why Mr. Oswald's calls could not have gone through in paragraph 36. The findings of fact in paragraphs 30 through 36 demonstrate gross insubordination. Dr. Latson's intentional refusal to obey a direct order, reasonable in nature, given by and with proper authority. There is no basis for the administrative law judge's conclusion that gross insubordination was not proven based on these facts. Assuming the board rescinds the prior vote, I will recommend that the board reject the administrative law judge's finding of fact or conclusion of law in paragraph 77, that Dr. Latson's actions did not rise to the level of gross insubordination, and instead substitute the finding or more reasonable conclusion that the actions did rise to the level of gross insubordination. Based on a review of the administrative law judge's recommended order, the board should next reject the administrative law judge's finding of fact in paragraph 79 that Dr. Latson's farewell letter did not violate a direct order from his supervisors or from the school board's reasonable policies, because this finding is not based upon competent substantial evidence. The administrative law judge found in paragraph 26 that Deputy Superintendent Oswald told Dr. Latson on July 6, 2019, quote, not to make any statements or to not say anything, and that we are working internally with the communications department about this, end quote, and directed him not to make any further contact at that time. The administrative law judge found in paragraphs 40 and 44 that Dr. Latson emailed the faculty and staff at Spanish River High School on the afternoon of July 8, 2019, writing, quote, I have been reassigned to the district office due to a statement that was not accurately relayed to the newspaper by one of our parents. It is unfortunate that someone can make a false statement and do so anonymously, and it holds credibility, but that is the world we live in, end quote. The administrative law judge also found in paragraph 46 that Dr. Latson's placement of blame on the parent undermined the apology and made matters worse. The administrative law judge found in paragraph 50 that the lesson that Wells and others took from Dr. Latson's removal was that you should not teach controversial subjects. In fact, and as a matter of law, the state of Florida does not consider the occurrence of the Holocaust to be controversial. It does not and cannot prevent any student or parent from holding the absurd belief that the Holocaust did not happen. It can and does mandate that the student will be taught that history is not opinion or belief, and that the Holocaust did occur. Through his action, Dr. Latson caused a great number of people to doubt the commitment of this school district to honor that mandate. His unilateral attribution of the reasons for his termination caused further disruption in the Spanish River High School community. Finally, the administrative law judge found in paragraph 51 that many Spanish River High School faculty and staff were left with the idea that Dr. Latson was reassigned because of the April 2018 emails, and were left with a sense of injustice and unfairness. The community, the faculty, and the staff were angry, and some of that anger was directed at the complaining parent and her student. Dr. Latson's allocation of blame to the parent and pointing out a false statement also sowed discontent among the faculty and staff directed towards the district. Because Dr. Latson's email stating the reasons for his reassignment were the April 2018 emails and what he considered to be a false statement from a parent, the faculty and staff felt that the district did not support the staff. Assuming the board rescinds the prior vote, I will recommend that the board rejects the administrative law judge's finding of fact in that paragraph 79 that Dr. Latson's farewell letter did not violate a direct order from his supervisors, and substitute the finding that it did violate a direct order from his supervisors. Assuming the board rescinds the prior vote, I will recommend that the board rejects the administrative law judge's finding of fact or conclusion of law in paragraph 79, that Dr. Latson's letter did not rise to the level of gross insubordination, and instead substitute the finding or more reasonable conclusion that the letter did rise to the level of gross insubordination. The board should reject the administrative law judge's finding of fact and or conclusions of law in paragraph 85, that the record failed to establish by a preponderance of the evidence that Dr. Latson engaged in misconduct in office, incompetence, or gross insubordination is not based upon substantial evidence. As to misconduct in office, the administrative law judge correctly stated in paragraph 71 that a principal may be dismissed for misconduct in office, and in paragraph 72 that misconduct in office includes violations of adopted school board rules and behavior that reduces the teacher's ability or his or her colleagues' ability to effectively perform duties. The administrative law judge also correctly found in paragraph 74 that school board policy 3.02 requires an employee, such as Dr. Latson, to take responsibility and be accountable for his or her acts or omissions, and to cooperate with others to protect and advance the district and its students. The findings of fact in paragraphs 30 through 36 about Dr. Latson's failure to call Keith Oswald demonstrate misconduct in office, in that Dr. Latson failed to take responsibility and be accountable for his acts or omissions, and failed to cooperate with the administration in protecting and advancing the district and its students. The findings of facts in paragraphs 26, 44, 50, and 51 about the farewell letter also demonstrate misconduct in office, in that Dr. Latson again failed to take responsibility and be accountable for his acts or omissions, and failed to cooperate with the administration in protecting and advancing the district and its students. Dr. Latson took actions that undermined his apology for his offensive statement, caused a great number of people to doubt the commitment of the district to honor its mandate to teach the Holocaust, and caused further disruption in the Spanish River High School community, including causing the faculty and staff of the school to feel the district did not support them. Assuming the board rescinds the prior vote, I will recommend that the board rejects the administrative law judge's finding of fact or conclusion of law in paragraph 85, that Dr. Latson's conduct was not misconduct in office, and instead substitute the finding or more reasonable conclusion that his conduct was misconduct in office. As to incompetency, the administrative law judge correctly stated in paragraph 71 that a principal may be dismissed for incompetency, and in paragraph 75 that incompetency includes, quote, failure to communicate appropriately with and relate to colleagues, administrators, subordinates, or parents, end quote. The findings of fact in paragraphs 30 through 36 about Dr. Latson's failure to call Keith Oswald demonstrates incompetency. Dr. Latson's failure to communicate appropriately with and relate to administrators. The findings of fact in paragraphs 26, 40, 44, 50, and 51 about the farewell letter also demonstrate incompetency, and that Dr. Latson failed to communicate appropriately with colleagues, administrators, subordinates, or parents. Assuming the board rescinds the prior vote, I will recommend that the board substitute the finding and more reasonable conclusion that Dr. Latson's actions did rise to the level of misconduct in office, incompetence, and gross insubordination, which provides just cause for a suspension and termination. As to progressive discipline, the administrative law judge's finding of fact that progressive discipline applied to Dr. Latson in paragraphs 57 and 82 was not based upon competent substantial evidence. As the administrative law judge noted in paragraphs 55 through 57, there was some unrebutted evidence, including testimony from former superintendents and a document entitled The Discipline Process, a Guide for Principals and Department Heads, about a practice of progressive discipline. Even accepting the unrebutted evidence, however, it was not competent substantial evidence that progressive discipline had to be followed to terminate Dr. Latson. In paragraph 82, the administrative law judge cited the case of Queller versus Duval County School Board, in which the court held that a school board had to comply with the progressive discipline policy that was set forth in a collective bargaining agreement. In this case, however, there was no evidence the collective bargaining agreement required a progressive discipline policy to be followed for principals. There was also no evidence that Dr. Latson's contract required progressive discipline, that the statute, section 1012.33, required progressive discipline, or that any adopted school board policy of the board requires progressive discipline. Even accepting the unrebutted evidence summarized in paragraphs 55 through 57, it was still not competent substantial evidence to support the finding of fact in paragraphs 57 and 82 that progressive discipline applied to Dr. Latson. Assuming the board rescinds the prior vote, I will recommend that the board reject the administrative law judge's finding that progressive discipline applied to Dr. Latson, and substitute the finding that progressive discipline was not required to be followed for Dr. Latson. To the extent the administrative law judge was making a conclusion of law in paragraph 82 that progressive discipline applied, the board should reject this conclusion of law because there was no contractual, adopted board policy, or statutory requirement for progressive discipline. Because progressive discipline was not applicable, the board should also reject the administrative law judge's conclusions of law in paragraph 82, that Dr. Latson's conduct was not severe enough to warrant termination, and Dr. Latson's conduct should result in a verbal or written reprimand, lowest rungs on the ladder of progressive discipline. And in paragraph 85, that the punishment imposed on Dr. Latson was too severe in light of his 26 years of service, including 8 laudable years as principal at Spanish River High School. Assuming the board rescinds the prior vote, I will recommend that in place of the administrative law judge's erroneous conclusions about progressive discipline in paragraph 82, the board adopts the more reasonable conclusion that progressive discipline was not required to be followed for Dr. Latson. Assuming the board rescinds the prior vote, I will recommend that in place of administrative law judge's erroneous conclusion of law in paragraphs 82 and 85, the board adopts the more reasonable conclusion that the punishment imposed on Dr. Latson was not too severe. For the reasons already discussed, Dr. Latson did commit misconduct in office, incompetence, and gross insubordination, which provides statutory just cause for dismissal, and progressive discipline was not required. Assuming the board rescinds the prior vote, I will recommend that the board increase the recommended penalty set forth in paragraphs 82 and 84 in the recommendation section from a transfer of Dr. Latson to suspension without pay and termination of Dr. Latson's employment. That's all I have at this point, board members. So, go ahead, Mrs. McQuinn.
Thank you so much. This won't take long, but probably longer than some would prefer. Thank you,
Ms.
Chair.
McQuinn, can I just ask you a question? Why don't we get the motion on the floor at this point?
Oh, fine. That sounds good.
So I'll make the recommendation. If we can get the motion, we can all discuss it. Ms. Brew?
Thank you, and this isn't with regard to the order, but I want to go on record saying this, that following the meeting on October 7th, at 9:17 in the morning of October 8th, I contacted the Inspector General, and I requested an investigation into the way the investigation was handled. For me, this is not over. We need to do better, as Mrs. Andrews said, and once again, I'm going to say never again. Thank you.
Can we get a motion on the floor? Go ahead, Ms.
I was just going to make your motion for you. I'd like to make a motion that we accept Mr. Barbieri's comments incomplete. I actually think they're a really great job. Thank you. I knew you were an attorney. Now we get to see what a great job you did. Thank you. And I also made a very similar itemized list, so I'll give that to the attorneys just in case it helps as well.
Ms. Whitfield, I appreciate you, but the recommendation's got to be a little more clear according to the.
Sorry, I'll do it a little
Let me read the
shorter.
recommendation, and then you can.
I'd like to recommend, I'd like
Okay.
to make a motion to include the entire document that you just read out loud as the motion. Does that work for the attorneys?
No, let me make the recommendation, and then you can follow up with the motion. I recommend the board rescind the vote that was taken at the October 7, 2020 special meeting on agenda item COS 1, adoption of final order, Palm Beach County School Board versus William Latson. In the event that the board affirmatively votes to rescind its prior approval of agenda item COS 1, the board shall discuss changes to the administrative law judge's recommended order that it wishes to be incorporated into a new final order and vote on a date and time to consider and adopt it. That's what was given to me by the attorneys. Mrs. Whitfield, if you would like to make that motion. Motion made by Mrs. Whitfield,
please.
seconded by Mrs. McQuinn. Now we're under discussion. So, Mrs. McQuinn, I saw your hand first, so go for it.
Thank you. I want to begin this by, begin the ending, by not, I want to make it clear that this is not a condemnation of our superintendent or our administration, but it will be what I hope a recognition that for an entire year, 2 years, significant errors have been made. And I understand that that may not happen because of legal reasons, but I think there are some pieces that the general public doesn't know. This started with a parent who, in my opinion, had the incredible patience for not going public with this for 2 years. So when her daughter entered Spanish River High School as a 9th grader. Let's see, that would be the 17-18 school year. She just wanted to understand how the Holocaust curriculum was taught at Spanish River High School, because it is state-mandated curriculum. Schools, now that may have changed in the last year, but schools determine what that curriculum is, but you're bound to do that. And in this particular case, it was an assembly for all 10th graders. So now we go through that school year. Student is in the 10th grade, where we require this curriculum, I think. I'm pretty sure. In fact, I know it is. I have it written here. I've been very careful to index this so I don't make you crazy. So now we get to spring of the 10th grade, and parent still has a question. And yeah, for sure. So in April of 2018, Dr. Latson wrote, and I'm quoting, "The curriculum is to be introduced but not forced upon individuals, as we all have the same rights but not all the same beliefs. We advertise it to the 10th grade parents, as there are some who do not want their children to participate, and we have to allow them the ability to decline." Okay, that's flat out opposition to state statute. So this is where it's going to sound very critical. When I told Dr. Fenoy on a Monday afternoon before our last year's Wednesday vote, when he brought the recommendation for Dr. Latson's termination, I said, from reading all of these stacks of materials we've been given, there's nothing in here that says you're bringing a recommendation to terminate because of what he really did wrong. What he really did wrong was fail to require that the curriculum be taught to all students. He made it voluntary, and I addressed that before about the generations that may be impacted by that. The part I'm so very frustrated about, and I welcome an investigation by our IG, who hasn't been part of us for years, so I feel really good about that. This is what I want you to understand. At the end of 2 years, it was clear that Dr. Latson, in his conference with the parents, a rabbi, Dr. Ian Saltzman, his regional superintendent, who's now a superintendent in Washington State, I might add. In that conference, when I read the minutes of the meeting, Dr. Latson was still, now he's saying, well, I don't know how to get all this in because we have testing coming up. I need to see the FY20 calendar. So then I said to the superintendent, he said that our HR department said, well, there might be double jeopardy if I bring forward the case for termination because he didn't mandate the Holocaust curriculum, because there might be double jeopardy. Folks, this man, as Mr. Shaw said, there were interventions. There was no direct order in writing anywhere for Dr. Latson to do his job. That's administration's job to make that happen. I guarantee you, had I been his supervisor and a parent came to me, I would have said, do your job, and we wouldn't be here 2 years later. So I'm appalled by that. I think I used that word in the Palm Beach Post. I need to stop using that. So here is, for me, the worst part. So that summer, so now we're end of the 10th grade, right? And this was a year ago. When school was out, Dr. Latson received an evaluation, his annual evaluation. See, people don't want you to know this. It was perfect. Not one reference to what he failed to do. And he received a 3-year contract to continue his job as a principal. Folks, Will Latson failed. He failed students. This district administration failed to make him do his job. I'm almost through. We received a lot of emails saying that if William Latson was not black, you wouldn't have voted the way you did. Well, I'm going to tell you something. I am a strong supporter and believer in Black Lives Matter, and I'm not apologetic for that. Many of us, regardless of our heritage, and I want to point out that my maternal grandfather's name is Sigler. I'm very proud of my Jewish heritage. But we can sit in rooms, and no one has to know our heritage unless we choose to tell them. If you are a black student, you cannot hide the color of your skin. And we still have blacks being murdered today. And I'm not going to sit here as a board member and act like, oh, you do this because of Black Lives Matter. Yep, I do. Because when a student sits in a classroom and feels less than because he or she is black, I'm not going to stand for that. So I don't apologize for that. But Frank, it doesn't matter to me whether Will Latson is black or whether he's not. He didn't do his job. Okay, I realize that doesn't sound nice, but I had to put that in there. I don't often agree with Dr. Robinson either, so really, I think you want to take note of that. And then finally, look, I have it all in order. So calling attention again, Dr. Latson was never disciplined. There were interventions. There was no double jeopardy, and I'm not an attorney, but you know what? I know how to read, and I know how to read critically. So I do want to end with, I don't know why our superintendent at the last board meeting said that he was conducting and having someone conduct an independent investigation, why we're going to pay an attorney to do that. Because frankly, I don't trust anybody right now except our own IG, who doesn't have any reason to do anything differently. Because attorneys argue many sides, as we all know, with great respect to our attorneys. And then I just want to end with one thing, bear with me. This is me. The Holocaust is a factual historical event. It is not a right or a belief. The state of Florida mandates that students will be taught that history is not opinion or belief, and that the Holocaust did occur. The Holocaust, the systematic planned annihilation of European Jews and other groups by Nazi Germany, a watershed event in the history of humanity, is to be taught in Florida for the purposes of encouraging tolerance of diversity in a pluralistic society, and for nurturing and protecting democratic values and institutions. There are so many divisive issues facing our country right now. We should be able to express our views. We've got some tough conversations coming up as a board. We should be able to express our outrage without being personally attacked. I believe we can and we will be better than this. Thanks for your indulgence.
Thank you, Ms. McQuinn. Mrs. Whitfield?
Thanks. So looking through your suggestions, I just had one addition that I would like to propose to add in. Under misconduct in office, looking at that rule, there were 2 items under the definition of misconduct in office, D and E, behavior that disrupts the student's learning environment, and behavior that reduces the teacher's ability and his or her colleagues' ability to effectively perform duties. Through that piece, I actually went through the transcript and found sections that supported the disruption of the environment, and I didn't see that specifically itemized in your list, so if it's okay to add a little piece about that, I can give the actual page numbers and quotes to the attorney.
So, Ms. Whitfield, when we get to the discussion on changing the final order, can you just make sure you make it at that, exactly what you just said at that point?
Yep,
That gives
absolutely.
direction, that'll give direction to the legal team to make sure it's in the revised final order.
Thank
And we
you.
can discuss it at that time also. Ms. Breaux?
Thank you. So are we just going to vote right now on rescinding the order and then give our recommendations? Because we're all going into the recommendations, so I'll call the question.
Well, let's make sure the other board members get a chance to say something if they want to. Mrs. Andrews, and then go ahead, Mrs. Andrews.
Thank you. And I really want to tell you, in these transcripts, the investigation that we did here in the district is a lot to be desired. I was embarrassed with what I saw happening within this district with investigating this whole process here. And then we have employees who have been retaliated against for speaking out about the badness that was going on all around this. And we can't be about that anymore, folks. And board members are coming to meetings or meeting with the superintendent every week, and we know nothing about any of this. That has to stop. But I do want to bring this piece in. Mr. Latson received, and it ties into what Mrs. McQuinn said, the 3-year contract with superb evaluations. And the way we normally process those 3-year contracts are transactional. So we get those numbers. We don't see anybody's name. We don't know if something is going on here in the district as a board to tell me that maybe I don't need to vote on that transaction. I'm asking this board through the superintendent that we do a better job with that. So when we have principals coming forth for 3-year contracts, that we get a chance to see that and look at that. I don't want to macromanage his job, but here we are sitting here in a situation where he has been exemplary. For almost 3 years, we have an issue that's has been so poor that it's attracted national and international attention because of what was going on within our school. And here we are on record as a board approving a 3-year contract. So that whole process needs to be cleaned up, a little bit more refined. And as a board member, I want to be able to know what's going on when a principal gets a 3-year contract, especially when something in this district at that level is going on and I'm actually approving it as a board member.
Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. Well, I think that as a board, we need to have a lot of discussion about our expectations. I have some board discussion items that relate to some of that. I'm just a little bit, I can't find the right verb, a little bit irritated, I think. Okay, let me not even walk down that road. So, but in terms of process, so the motion to rescind, assuming it passes, takes us back prior to the superintendent's recommendation earlier. So that, as I understand, needs to be put back forward for us to vote up or down before we then start talking about exceptions to the ALJ's ruling. So if the motion to rescind passes, it cancels the previous vote. It does not reverse the previous vote. So the previous item needs to be put back in front of us to vote up or down.
General Counsel?
Yes, Dr. Robinson, and that's what would happen at a upcoming meeting to be scheduled by the board.
She's suggesting that when we rescind, now we have nothing out there. In the superintendent's we rejected the superintendent's recommendation by rescinding. So at that point, we have to re-vote on his recommendation. I think that's what you're suggesting, Dr. Robinson.
The motion to rescind is similar to the motion to reconsider in that it just cancels the previous action. It's as though we were 5 minutes prior to that vote on October 7th or whatever date it was. So the recommendation has to come back before us to vote up or down. That needs to happen like right now so we can vote that up or down. So assuming that we vote against the ALJ's recommendation, then we enter into the conversation about the specifics in the recommendation that we take exception to.
That'll be fine. I think we would get to the same place, but there's certainly nothing wrong with
We need to be procedurally correct.
going back and voting down the original October 7th recommendation to accept.
If the superintendent made a recommendation and the board did not act on it, would the superintendent's recommendation fail?
Yes.
Okay, so if we rescind the vote on the last, we're actually taking no action on the superintendent's recommendation, so his recommendation would fail because of the board did not support it.
Correct.
I think that'd be the cleaner way to do it, Dr. Robb, instead of sticking another motion in there that might.
Yeah, I don't agree, and I don't know how we start talking about exceptions to the ALJ's recommendation when we don't take a vote again on the ALJ's recommendation. We had this conversation already, Mr. Littlejohn, did we not?
We may have, Dr. Robinson. I do not recall having this specific conversation with you.
So what I don't want to do is end up losing subsequent litigation on some kind of technicality. That's what I don't want to do.
Yeah. The key is that the final order has to have the basis for changing the ALJ's recommendation, and that's what we propose that you talk about today. Give us direction on how to redraft the order that would make it acceptable to you, and then that would come back at the future meeting.
So your recommendation is that we do not do a separate motion on accepting or rejecting the superintendent's recommendation of reinstatement that we voted 4-3 on at the last meeting? Your recommendation is we don't revisit that vote. Just by rescinding, we're done with it, and now we move on to modifying the final order. Is that your recommendation to the board?
Yes, sir.
General Counsel, I know that the Chinese wall is up, but I mean, this seems to be something that doesn't really fall within that prohibition. So, I mean, I don't want to embarrass the Deputy General Counsel. I just want to make sure the record is clean here so that we don't have any issues. So, do you agree that we don't need to take a second a vote on the superintendent's recommendation?
Well, I think
Microphone, please.
I think to be...
No microphone.
I think to be procedurally cautious, it might be best to go through the additional hoop of bringing it back, just to make sure that procedurally you've covered all of the bases. But I agree that you get to the end result. You get to the end result regardless of which steps you take.
The board just wants to make sure that the record is clear, clean, and there's not any procedural defects that would cause us to have to come back here and try and do this again. So, okay, so we'll go with Dr. Robinson's suggestion, but so let's vote. If you're all through commenting on this, Ms. McQuinn? You're done? Okay. All in favor of the motion to rescind the vote that was taken on the October 7, 20, and the other items that are in there? I'm sorry, Mr. Shaw, I never called on you to see if you wanted, okay. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. The vote is rescinded. Dr. Robinson, do you want to make a motion?
No, I don't want to make the motion. So, but I guess for...
Superintendent, I guess you need to make the
in order
recommendation
to put it
again
on
to
the
us.
table, right?
Yes, I'd like to withdraw P3 at this time.
Okay, but on the prior, on the recommendation that you made to the board that we reinstate, we accept the final order that reinstated Dr. Latson. The board just rescinded that. So would you like to make that recommendation again to us so we can take another vote? Is that what you're suggesting, General Counsel? So the recommendation needs to be made again?
Yes, sir, I understand that. So I'm going back to the October 7th.
Yes.
The recommendation, I recommend the board approve adoption of the final order of the matter of School District of Palm Beach County versus William Latson.
Thank you. Dr. Robinson?
I'm going to make the motion in order for us to vote on it.
Right.
And I need somebody to check Robert's rules to see if that's going to lock me into voting in favor of the motion.
It will.
And so I'll leave my motion out there because I think it's procedurally important that we take this vote. The seconder of the motion would not have to support the motion, but I think it's important that we take this vote for the record. And I would like the record to show why I'm making this motion. Thank you.
What if I ask the superintendent to withdraw his recommendation at this point? We have a recommendation that's sitting out there that needs to be voted on. The superintendent's willing to withdraw his recommendation, and we don't have to vote on it, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Superintendent, would you withdraw that recommendation you made to us on October 7th that started all of this in the first place, please?
No, that doesn't work.
There's some confusion from the board.
Ms. Brill?
I don't understand why we're not just voting on the superintendent's recommendation now.
Somebody's got to vote. Somebody's got to make a motion to.
He just made the motion. We can second it. We can vote. Done. So there's a motion.
I can't hear you, Ms. Brill. Turn your microphone back on.
So Dr. Fenoy just read the motion. Second vote.
The motion that he made was to recommend that we adopt the final order and reinstate Dr. Latson. Somebody's got to make a motion. It's a recommendation. If you make the motion, you brought up the point that you can't vote against it. That's what you were told. You can't vote against it.
Yes, I understand that.
May I interrupt?
Yes, Mr. Harris, please. We're waiting for you.
Okay. In our policy 1.03, it says the maker of a motion is not allowed to speak against the motion, although the maker can vote against the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. You're there when we need you. Dr. Robinson, you make the motion? And it's seconded by Ms. Brill. Any discussion? All in favor? Ms. McQuinn? I don't think that's what I'm not telling you how to vote, but all in favor of the superintendent's recommendation that we adopt the final order? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0 in opposition. So the motion, the superintendent's recommendation is not adopted by the board, and his recommendation fails. The motion fails.
Yes. 07.
06. 07. 07, Mr. Shaw?
No, I believe that what you just did answered it. My question was going to be, when there's a motion, if there's no second, then the item is voted down automatically. Is that not right? So that would, but I think we dealt with it, so I don't have any other comment.
Okay, so you voted against the recommendation just now?
Yes.
Okay, so it was 07. Okay. Mrs. Whitfield.
I'm curious. So I'm very glad. I really wanted to make that motion today. So I'm glad we did that. But as far as all these itemized lists, do we have to, we don't adopt those today. We're going to adopt those in another upcoming meeting.
What we need to do today, Mr. Whitfield, my understanding from talking to General Counsel over the last 3 days, day and night, is that we will now discuss the changes we'd like to see in the final order, and then they will bring that back to us at a meeting that we're going to also schedule today. We're going to vote on a date to schedule that meeting on or before November 11th. So if you allow me just to go through and make my recommendations that I had laid out, and then take other ones. You had one, Mrs. Whitfield. I know Ms. Brill had a few that she wanted to make. Mrs. Brill?
Thank you.
Well, my suggestion was going to be, because you read them already, that we submit our comments to the legal department so they can merge them together. But I would like to add a preliminary statement. The judge had, in his recommended order, had a preliminary statement, so I can read that now.
Let's get a motion on the floor to discuss the final order. That's the next item. We need a motion to discuss changes to the final order. Motion made by Mrs. Andrews, seconded by Mrs. Whitfield. I don't remember who was first then. Who wanted to go first? Mrs. Whitfield? Okay, Ms. Brill. Ms. Whitfield, whichever. One of you start talking.
Go ahead, Mrs. Rowe.
Okay, thank you. So a lot of our findings are the same, Mr. Barbieri, so I'm happy to provide everybody with a copy. But what I would like to do is read a statement that I would like to be put under the preliminary statement in our revised order. And I want to thank Attorney Biazzo for his input on this also. This is the statement. This entire matter was precipitated by Dr. Latson stating, quote, "I can't say that the Holocaust is a factual historical event because I am not in a position to do so as a district employee," unquote, and implying that the Holocaust authenticity is a matter of opinion in an email to a student's parent. Holocaust denial is a modern form of anti-Semitism as defined by Florida Statute 1000.05, paragraph 7A4, which makes Dr. Latson's statement towards a student's parent, which was made while Dr. Latson was acting in his official capacity as a school principal, potentially illegal, discriminatory, and grossly inappropriate. Although not the basis of these proceedings, the ALJ found in paragraph 76 of the recommended order that, quote, "rather than carefully choosing his words when speaking with a parent, ... he offended her by making an endorsement of sorts of Holocaust deniers," unquote. So I would like to have that in our preliminary statement, and then the rest of these items can be merged with yours.
So you want to make a motion to that effect, Ms. Brill, so we need to do that?
Yes, please.
Okay, motion, Ms. Brill, for that, what you just read?
I move that what I just read get incorporated into the preliminary statement.
We have a second? Mrs. Whitfield, is there any discussion on that one? Okay, that's the first modification that we're making to the record. So go ahead, Mrs. Whitfield.
You know what, I'll wait till you get to your misconduct in office, then I'll mention it.
Okay, so if I can go through the recommendations and take motions
Yeah.
one at a time, Dr. Robinson?
So I guess I'm stuck in my process. Me and Mrs. McQuinn, we're process stuck people, I guess. But why are we doing motions on this? So what I understood from Attorney Littlejohn was that we would have discussion. Legal would take that, draft up what in my mind would be exceptions, and then we would formally vote on those at the next meeting. So have we now decided that we need to do a motion and vote on each potential? Because I have lots of things in my notes that have overlapped. So are we having discussion or formal voting? I'm confused at this point.
You're taking formal votes on giving us direction as to what you want changed. So if you have overlap,
that's fine,
with another board member's comments, it would be appropriate for you to put those in there and come to a consensus that you vote on.
I'm just biting my tongue. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so let me go through the 9 recommendations, and if we can and then whatever else you guys want to add, okay? All right. The first recommendation, I recommend the board reject the administrative law judge's finding of fact or conclusion of law in paragraph 77 that Dr. Latson's actions did not rise to the level of gross insubordination, and instead substitute the finding of or more reasonable conclusion that the actions did rise to the level of gross insubordination. Any motion? Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, seconded by Mrs. Anders. Any discussion? Mrs. Whitfield.
So it was my understanding at this point we need to have citations from within the 1,300-page transcript, or is that not true? You'll do that later?
Yes, those will need to be in the order. So yes, please, go ahead. Okay, we'll bring them back.
So you want us to go through the citations right now and all that?
No.
So you're going to put the citations in
We'll
based
put the
on...
citations in if you tell us what it is that you want.
Right now or
No.
later? Later.
They're going to bring that back when they bring us the final order next time. They'll have the citations there for the motions, for the changes we're making today.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Brill?
So I also found gross insubordination, and I will provide you with my citations, and you can see if there's overlap or add anything to it.
The reasons need to be stated with particularity today. We will take the reasons the board votes on with particularity. We will write a final order that is legally sufficient and bring it back for voting. If you tell us something, if it's in the record, we'll find it. But you don't have to cite page and line during this discussion. Does that make sense?
So oh, sorry.
Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. So on the issue of gross insubordination, I just think we need to specifically state the definition, because then we could refer back to the actions, because it meets the legal definition, right?
So the definition is already in the order. So you're only making modifications today. So if you can take the things that are already in the order for granted in your discussion, and you can say, I think it was gross insubordination for X reason, but you don't have to restate the definition of gross insubordination because that's already in the order.
Okay, Dr. Rums? Ms. Whitfield?
Okay, so I have just a couple, and maybe I can make this in a way that is reasonable for this process. So on page 347, and again, he reiterated the fact that he had to be neutral, and I explained to him, you do not have to be neutral. You are a district employee. By statute, you have to follow it, from Mr. Oswald. Exhibit 47, where Mr. Oswald said he should not send out anything, went against it there. And then on page 240, I don't want to read all of this for you, but Mr. Oswald again says that he specifically told him not to make any further contact. The question was from Mr. Gonzalez, and he said, yes, yes. So those are my items for gross insubordination.
That's fine.
Okay, we don't need a motion on that. You're just going to add those citations in the final order?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Brill?
Thank you. So I'm getting a little confused over how we're doing this, so I'm going to read what I have under gross insubordination, and if there's overlap, the attorneys can take care of cleaning that up. So to begin, Dr. Latson's lack of communication with Mr. Oswald by text and phone, in spite of being told it was quote-unquote urgent, is gross insubordination. That Dr. Latson was able to speak on the phone with friends, family members, and Dr. Johnson indicates his phone was functioning at the time. As stated in paragraph 71 of the recommended order, a principal may be dismissed for gross insubordination. As stated in paragraph 77 of the recommended order, gross insubordination is the intentional refusal to obey a direct order, reasonable in nature and given by and with proper authority, misfeasance or malfeasance, as to involve failure in the performance of required duties. The board should reject the ALJ's conclusion that Dr. Latson's actions did not rise to the level of gross insubordination. The ALJ found in paragraph 30, based on admissions by Dr. Latson, that Deputy Superintendent Keith Oswald requested Dr. Latson call him back by noon on July 8, 2019, that Dr. Latson would have to obey such a directive, and that Dr. Latson made no effort to communicate with Mr. Oswald before noon of July 8, 2019. The ALJ found in paragraphs 31 and 32 that Mr. Oswald called repeatedly and left messages, quote unquote, increasing with urgency, on the morning of July 8, 2019. The ALJ also found in paragraph 33 that Dr. Latson placed 9 and received 4 telephone calls between 7:36 a.m. and noon on July 8, 2019, and he rejected Dr. Latson's explanations about why Mr. Oswald's calls could not have gone through in paragraph 36. The findings of fact in paragraph 30 through 36 demonstrate gross insubordination. Dr. Latson's intentional refusal to obey a direct order, reasonable in nature, given by and with proper authority. There is no basis for the ALJ's conclusion that gross insubordination was not proven based on these facts. Accordingly, the board should reject the ALJ's findings of fact or conclusion of law in paragraph 77 that Dr. Latson's actions did not rise to the level of gross insubordination, and instead substitute the finding or more reasonable conclusion that the actions did rise to the level of gross insubordination. The board should also reject the ALJ's finding of fact in paragraph 79 that Dr. Latson's quote-unquote farewell letter did not violate a direct order from his supervisors or from the school board's reasonable policies, because this finding is not based on competent substantial evidence. The ALJ found in paragraph 26 that Deputy Superintendent Oswald told Dr. Latson on July 6, 2019, quote, not to make any statements and not to say anything, and that we are working internally with the communications department on this, unquote, and directed him not to make any further contact at that time. The ALJ found in paragraphs 40 and 44 that Dr. Latson emailed the faculty and staff at Spanish River High School on the afternoon of July 8, 2019, writing, quote, I have been reassigned to the district office due to a statement that was not accurately relayed to the newspaper by one of our parents. It is unfortunate that someone can make a false statement and do so anonymously, and it holds credibility, but that is the world we live in, unquote. The ALJ found in paragraph 46 that Dr. Latson's placement of blame on the parent undermined the apology and made matters worse. The ALJ found in paragraph 50 that although through his actions, Dr. Latson caused a great number of people to doubt the commitment of the district to honor its mandate to teach children that the Holocaust is a historical fact, and that Dr. Latson's unilateral attribution of the reasons for his termination caused further disruption in the Spanish River High School community. Accordingly, the board should reject the ALJ's finding of fact in paragraph 79 that Dr. Latson's farewell letter did not violate a direct order from his supervisors. The board should further reject the ALJ's finding of fact or conclusion of law in paragraph 79 that Dr. Latson's letter did not rise to the level of gross insubordination, and instead substitute a finding or more reasonable conclusion that the letter did rise to the level of gross insubordination. The board should reject the ALJ's finding of fact or conclusion of law in paragraph 85 that the record failed to establish by a preponderance of evidence that Dr. Latson engaged in gross insubordination as not based upon competent substantial evidence. The board should substitute the finding or more reasonable conclusion that Dr. Latson's actions did rise to the level of gross insubordination, which proves just cause for his suspension and termination.
So that's a motion? Okay, that's a motion by Ms. Brill, seconded by Ms. Whitfield. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. So let me ask you, Mr. Littlejohn, all of the stuff that I had put in there that I read earlier, can we just reference that as I make these recommendations? Because a lot of them are exactly what Ms. Brill said, because I have all that stuff in the record already. Can we just have a motion to adopt all of the comments that I made when I was giving the reasons why we should rescind the vote as part of the record, since they've all been read in? If we have a board motion to that effect, does that move everything in?
Yes, sir.
All right. So we have a motion by Mrs. Whitfield, seconded by Mrs. Andrews. So everything that I read earlier, the board is agreeing to, and we're moving that into the final order. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Mrs. Andrews.
And I think some of this is going to be repeated again, so as you have it, you have it. I would like to say for the insubordination piece that in the recommended order, the final order, page 20, when Dr. Latson made it clear that he had not been misinterpreted in his neutrality. So something has to be in there about that. Statements to the parent and not walking back his statements at the same level. He believed that he did not believe that all children had to be taught the Holocaust, so he allowed many of the parents to keep their children home. So something needs to be in there about the neutrality piece. I don't know if anybody said that. It could be in Mr. Barbieri's piece.
Mrs. Andrews, I'm sorry, I was talking to the board clerk. Did you make a motion?
Yes.
Okay. Was it seconded?
Yeah, for the neutrality piece.
And for my benefit, since I have to vote on it, would you just mind repeating what you just made the motion on? I'm sure the board clerk
I'd
did.
like for us to make sure that we put the piece in on his neutrality statement where he made it clear that he had not been misinterpreted about his neutrality statements to the parent, and he wasn't going to walk it back. At some level, he believed, that's what the administrative judge said, and I think that's really important, that parents who do not want their children to be taught the Holocaust should be allowed to keep their children home.
All right, that's a motion by to add that into the final order. Was made by Mrs. Andrews. There's a second by Ms. Brill. Is there any discussion? Dr. Robinson?
So I agree with the spirit of the motion. It's just kind of touchy for me because, you know, I sent an email in asking about mandated assemblies and so forth at every school. We got the response back on October 20th. And so, and I think this is room for improvement. If we're going to say that we're going to mandate that every child participate in various assemblies, whether it's Holocaust or Haitian Flag Day, then we need to do that as a board instead of acting as though there's a mandate for every child to participate. I get that there's a state law, but we have never as a district followed, and I've been fighting about this for more than 20 years. We have never as a school district fully complied with the state law, and which is why you will see some of my discussion items. So I think it might be just a little bit touchy, the neutrality piece, yeah, because we expect it to be taught, but the mandate to attend an assembly, I think, is a little bit a step beyond what we have enforced in any other location. I think it might put us in a sketchy place.
Mrs. Andrews?
And I think it was unclear when I was reading the transcript whether the school district actually recognized that this was going on, but I think there was a letter that was sent to the parents letting them know when the assembly would be held so that if for some reason they did not want their children to attend the assembly, they could keep them home. So somewhere down the line there, it was informal, formal, where we were in this little process of making sure parents knew when it was going to happen so that they could decide to do what they wanted to do. I don't think it was the right of the district and the principal to actually do that, because this kind of leads them into the fact that they don't have to really be educated, and the law says that we want them to be educated.
Dr. Robinson? I'm sorry. Mr. Whitfield first.
Thank you. So I think this is a very interesting point that Dr. Robinson brings up, because when I was reading in the transcript as well, I got stuck on is a assembly part of the core curriculum or is an addition to it? And so what I think we need to do as a district, and I have been speaking with Mr. Oswald about this just this week, is, and we're going to be hopefully having a workshop on this, but identify what is core curriculum and identify what is additional to the curriculum, just extra opportunities for people to be able to have, because I don't know that it was truly clear at the time whether or not this assembly or all the assemblies were truly a mandate or addition to. And so I don't want to go after them on something that I think we're going to lose on. And so this is something that I think we don't necessarily have the solid backing about.
Mrs. McQuinn?
I did look into this carefully, and unless it's changed in the last few months in response to all of this going on, each school determines, obviously with advice from our, I think, director for Holocaust Studies, but each individual school determines how that curriculum will be taught. And at Spanish River High School, according to many people who testified, they offer an incredible Holocaust curriculum, not just that one assembly. However, what was clear was that that assembly, which then would cover every 10th grader, and so unless the student's new to the school or whatever, but if you're in attendance at that time, that the assembly is offered, it's not an opt-out situation. So I don't want our board to be, we have curriculum people who determine all this stuff. And I certainly don't want to be micromanaging whether it's actually attended. I mean, that's the job of our district staff and our principals. So again, it's the school's determination about how they deliver the curriculum. It's just that whatever that is, it cannot be opted out. Thank you.
So, Mrs. Andrews, would you modify your motion to, so I agree. I mean, we can't I don't believe that we should mandate how a school teaches, and if they have these assemblies, if we're going to require that every student must attend, I'm not sure we should do that for this one. We're not doing it for
Yeah,
others.
Mr. Shaw is leaving.
I'm concerned about the opt-out piece that was actually provided by the school to the parents before the assembly program. Now, I think if that letter had not been put in play there, this is some of the things the parent was talking about, and she was looking at the numbers of students that actually kind of participated. But a piece of that was through the process of the leadership at the school because their letter was out there. So it was something that struck me a lot because I don't want us to be out there telling parents that they do have an opportunity not to have their children learn. That's what the law is about, making sure that we teach the children.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes. Thank you. After this discussion, I would hope that before this particular item is put in there, that legal and staff have a chance to verify the position that we're taking on this. Since this isn't a final order, I'm not sure that we have consistency district-wide on this. I know there's a mandatory, there are different kinds of mandatory instructional things that are provided to the kids, and parents do have some opt-out options. One example is that in elementary school, the sex education program, parents have some options there on how that's handled. So I think that Mrs. Whitfield's question, whether or not it's part of the core curriculum or it's an additional activity, and whether or not it's consistently mandated or optional, needs to be verified before before that's included. So it doesn't matter to me if we approve this, but I just think that legal needs to make sure that we have consistency before it's actually part of what we'll be voting for on the final order. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes, Mr. Fahey.
Is my microphone on? Okay. I just need some clarification about what's being proposed by Ms. Andrews. Is there a specific finding of fact or conclusion of law in the recommended order that you're seeking to modify or set aside? For example, in paragraph 76, the ALJ concluded, quote, Dr. Latson ensured that the Holocaust and other statutorily required areas of study were taught at Spanish River High School, end quote. So does the board member disagree with that? Or I'm just seeking clarification on what's the motion would be.
I do agree that it was taught, but I think there were some modifications within the school that gave parents the ability to decide that they didn't want their children to participate by way of notifying them in advance of when that assembly would take place. So I read that in the transcripts. So I saw that little wiggle room. And it was interesting, the leaders here within the district wasn't aware of that, but there was quite a bit of discussion about that happening at the school. And I think, he indicated that he wasn't leading them to opt out, but because of the actions that were being taken at the school, parents had the heads up. So they did what they did because we gave them the heads up. I'm saying that we should not have done that.
And would that be a basis? Is the board member proposing that that's a basis for discipline, an additional basis for discipline in this case, or simply drawing attention to it in the order?
Well, I think that should be included in there because some children lost the opportunity to be educated based on what was happening through that process.
Mr. Fahey, is that clear enough for you to make your modification?
I don't think so.
No.
So it's in the order. Everything that's in the recommended order, unless the board modifies or rejects it, will still be there. So
Read that paragraph again, Mr. Fahey, the one you just mentioned.
76, the first sentence. Dr. Latson ensured that the Holocaust and other statutorily required areas of study were taught at Spanish River High School, end quote.
So, Mrs. Andrews, possibly you could make a motion to reject that finding, that he didn't do that because of the allowing students to opt out in advance, notifying them in advance what was going to be taught so they could.
Yes, that's what I was saying. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Ms. McCool?
It was very clear in reading some of the transcript relating to that, and again, stated by Attorney Elfers that Mr. Latson shouldn't be charged with, and that's the wrong word, so go back to the wording in it, with confronting Holocaust deniers. Well, the fact of the matter is, he didn't have to confront anybody. All he had to do was say, I'm implementing state statute. And it's very clear that that didn't happen.
Mr. Fay, you okay with this? Yes or no? How would you like us to modify this so that you can get it clear in the record?
Mr. Barbieri?
I would just like to know if, so for the sentence you just had me read, for example, does that, again, Ms. McQuinn, go to a basis for rejecting that finding of fact? Or is it something different in the order you think it's misconduct in office, incompetency, whatever? Which specific charge do you think it supports, or do you think there's a finding in the order that is wrong because of what you just said?
I know where you're going, because remember, I learned the new word, particularity, and have many notes. I think for now, it really doesn't relate to what it relates to, but it isn't specific to part of the recommended order, so it's just in addition to. Thank you.
Ms. Burrow.
Thank you, and I don't disagree with Mrs. Andrews' suggestion in general, but where my concern is that when I spoke with the legal department, Mr. Latson was not being terminated because he didn't enforce curriculum. So that's really not the basis for this order from the judge. I think we need to stick to the facts. I mean, I could think of a whole load of other reasons I would have fired him that have nothing to do with this. We can't put it in there, but from reading through the transcripts, reading through the transcripts and the recommended order, we have to stick to the gross insubordination and misconduct. So I'm just concerned that, and I'd like legal to advise us, if we add in what Mrs. Andrews is suggesting, does that give them the opportunity to pick it apart and say that we're focusing on things that were not a part of the action that the district took? Does that make sense?
Yes, you are correct. The charges are limited to the conduct in July of 2019.
So then, if I may follow up, I think Mrs. Andrews' suggestions that down the road, when we get the results of the investigation, we need to have a conversation on standards and how we implement the curriculum in the district, but we need to make this very clean, because we know no matter what we did today, we were going to be sued for one thing or another. We all know that. But we want to make sure this is as clean as possible so that it's not picked apart for focusing on things that were not a part of the case.
I can't hear you, Ms. Sanders. So you're withdrawing that for now? Yes? Yeah, turn your microphone on, because I'm looking at you through 4 panes of glass here, and
Yeah, let me let that one go, but may I do a couple more?
Yeah, sure.
And you may have already covered this. His inefficiency for one or more of the following, and I think failure to perform duties prescribed by the law, and his misconduct in office was a violation of adapted school board rules, and there was behavior that disrupt the students' learning environment with all of that was going on. You may have already put that in yours, but those are a couple that I thought needed to be added in there.
So that's a motion? Yes?
Yes.
Seconded by Dr. Robinson. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Saw that, Mrs. Whitfield. Motion carries 7-0. Anybody else want to add anything? Dr. Robinson?
So I know I'm out of order, I'm not on point, but while we keep talking about investigations and while we're acknowledging room for improvement, let's also look at our procedures for how staff is to respond, because I think that today we are setting an expectation, if I'm inferring correctly, we're setting an expectation for behavior that we have never expressed nor codified before. And so it would be, in my opinion, unfair to change practices in midstream and to criticize people for acting in the old way of doing things in days gone by when we're setting new rules. Somehow it reminds me when we suddenly changed how we were approving charter schools, right? So we can't change the way we expect staff to respond to things in midstream. I'm not talking about Mr. Latson, so let me just be clear. But it feels like we're going into a very bad place. And what I'm hoping to do is come out of this in a better place, working together to make sure we're educating all children about each other and not just casting blame. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Board members, unless you have any other changes you want to the final order, the next item that we need to take care of is we have to schedule a meeting for the legal team to bring it back to us for a vote, and also the superintendent has indicated he will withdraw P3. Mr. Superintendent?
Yes, sir. For the record, we were pulling P3 now that the board has made their decision.
All right, board members, so the legal team has indicated that this order needs to be finalized by November 11th. November 11th happens to be Veterans Day, which is a Wednesday. So rather than trying to have a meeting on Veterans Day, if you're all okay with having the meeting on Tuesday, November 10th instead, the day before? Mr. Shaw, go. Mr. Superintendent, what time would you prefer to schedule that meeting on the 10th of November?
I actually don't have a preference. I think whatever is good for the board, since this is important. So can we get back?
Mr. Littlejohn?
I would just suggest that you talk about what you would intend to do with regard to taking public comment at that time, because that probably will inform what time you need to start the meeting. Because you do have a November 11th deadline to adopt a final order. So you can't, you couldn't find yourself in a position where you've got 48 hours of public comment that you have to listen to before you can vote.
But we can suspend that.
You can suspend the rule. I'm just suggesting that you set the expectation today as to what will happen at the 10th with regard to public comment.
Okay. So the board's pleasure, 2 o'clock on that Tuesday, or when you want to start in the morning and just make sure we have the time? Do you want to do it at 9 like this one, or 2?
I prefer mornings if we can do morning. I said I prefer mornings if we can do mornings.
Ms. McQuinn?
I'll come whenever, but.
Ms. McQuinn, do you have a preference?
No, I was listening carefully, but frankly, I missed the actual date. I don't have a preference for time.
November 10th. Ms. Burrow, do you have a preference?
I prefer late morning or early afternoon because I have a business and I've got to, in the morning, address that first.
Mrs. Andrews? Late morning. Dr. Robinson, are you okay with like 11 then, instead of 2? Mr. Shaw, are you okay with 11 o'clock on
Yes.
November? Okay. Mr. Superintendent,
Yes.
would you agree to schedule a special meeting for the board?
Yes, I will agree to that, and I'll work with Ms. Bass to get that scheduled.
All right, thank you.
We'll follow up with all the board members this week.
All right, so board members, there'll be public comment. Do we need at this point to talk about whether or not we're going to listen to those recordings at that meeting, or do we wait till that meeting?
Well, just for clarification, there's two options available to the board. You can, because you'll be sitting in a quasi-judicial capacity, you can make a motion today to not allow public comment because you don't have to allow any public comment. Or you don't make a motion to do that. I believe public comment will come in, and as the board clerk has done, she will upload it so that the public and make it available to the board. And then at that meeting, you could do as you did today, take up a motion to suspend the recording. However, any individuals who are present would be allowed an opportunity to speak. So you have those two options. You could disallow public comment because you're sitting in a quasi-judicial capacity and you don't have to allow public comment. That would go into the notice so that the public is on notice that there will not be any public comment allowed. Therefore, you don't have to have any live speakers speak as well as any recorded comment. So you can handle it in either of two ways.
All right. Board members, do you have a preference? Somebody make a motion on this one? I mean, I would prefer, no, again, not to stifle public comment, but I mean, at this point, we're finalizing the final order that we've all discussed today. There was people here to talk about that, so if we can avoid having public comment on the next one so we can get through the business of finalizing that order. Ms. Brew?
Thank you. And I'm typically in opposition to that, but I do think we've given the public a lot of opportunity. To the public, we can still continue to receive email messages. People can still call us individually so that, the voices can be heard. But at this juncture, we need to put this to bed so that the state can conclude their actions and we can move forward.
Motion? That was a motion? No public comment? Yes?
I'll let someone else make that motion, though.
Mrs. Whitfield?
I'll just make that motion. Be brave, step out there.
Do we have a second? Ms. McQuinn? Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? You opposed, Mr. Shaw?
No, just a question, if I may.
Yep.
And for Ms. Bernard, if we do this, one of the concerns I have is that since we are making that final decision, is there any risk that public comment there could be used in an adverse way towards the board in being able to make the decision that we need to make? Is there any danger to us on things that might be said?
Well, as the board is aware, there should be no outside considerations that factor into your final order. So listening to public comment is one thing, but it should not be a factor. The only thing that should be considered, and I believe the board is already aware of this, when coming to putting together your final order, is the record itself. If that answers your question, Mr. Shaw.
Yes, it does. And Mr. Barbieri, just another quick comment. I would hope that once legal has an opportunity to start going through this and analyzing all the information we have, if there are any things that we've recommended in our comments that they feel need to be modified or removed, I think we need to give a little bit of latitude to legal to make sure that they are comfortable with the order being written in a way that suffices the credibility of our position.
Agreed, Mr. Shaw. So, Mr. Littlejohn, when you bring us back the final order with all the stuff we put in there today, if you all find something that really shouldn't be there, put it in there and then redline it because we're going to vote on it on that day. So if you guys see something that we put in there that shouldn't have been there, if you just redline it for us so that when we get there, we can either say, yes, we still want to keep it, or no, we want to delete it. So that follows on what Mr. Shaw was indicating. So can you do that for us?
Yes, sir.
All right. So Ms. Sanders?
Just one thing, and it may have been read by you or Ms. Brill, but I'm still on the neutrality piece here about Dr. Lassen indicating that the Holocaust was a belief, claiming that it was constitutional liberty in the interests of those involved, and the interest in not being forced to reveal information about a person's belief, and the interest of being forced to make statements about one's own views, which is a response to neutrality. Did you mention that? Because I think it needs to be somewhere in there as an administrator for the school district of Palm Beach County.
Was that in there? I think one of the board members mentioned
Somebody
that.
mentioned it. If it was mentioned, I just want to make sure we don't lose that. It was in the recommended order, page 22.
Which paragraph number?
22.
62.
52?
62.
And again, what's the request? Because paragraph 62, since the board has not given any indication today to modify it, will be there. It will remain in the order the board is adopting that paragraph. So is there a modification being asked for?
He said 62. Did you say 5-2? What is it, 5-2 or 6-2, Mrs. Andrews?
62.
5-2?
662.
Okay, it's hard to hear what these masks
These masks are hard.
6-2. So you had nothing so far in 62 from us?
I didn't hear a modification during the board's discussion of that.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's finish voting on the setting the time that we were in the middle of, and then we'll go to this other issue.
Okay.
So we're setting the time at 11 o'clock on November 10th. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, so Mrs. Andrews, you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I think that should, definitely needs to be in there, because as a administrator, that should be a known fact, that it's a fact, and that's what he's getting paid to do, to follow the law. So I would like to make a motion that would be added to the piece about his failure to perform his duties.
That he breached neutrality.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the issue we just discussed with the board, where the motion was withdrawn because there was concern that it exceeded the scope of the disciplinary charges in this case. So that would be the only point I would make.
Okay, so we're going to work on that for the future. She's withdrawing her motion. General Counsel, you had a comment?
Yes, to Madam Clerk, I just wanted to get clarification. Did we get a final vote on the motion to not allow public comment?
No.
Okay.
Maybe that's the motion we were in the middle of when I asked you to vote on the setting the time. It's a little confusing here today, I'm sorry. So we have a motion on the floor. Or do we have a motion on the floor? Was it made? You have a motion. Okay, it was made by? Okay, so we do have a motion.
Mr. Chair, can I just add to that we do need to be clear that Mr. Latson and/or his counsel will have an opportunity to speak. That would be the only party that would be allowed to speak.
And of course, the superintendent and his counsel can speak.
Correct.
Yes. Okay, so you modify the motion to that effect? Yes? Yes, okay. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Was there anything else that we were supposed to do today? General Counsel or Deputy General Counsel? With respect to this, I know we have board discussion items to get to, but
Looking at our notes, I don't see anything else. I think you've covered it all.
Mr. Barbieri, are you still going through each one of your recommendations, or are we done with that?
we did a motion to adopt everything that I had said with the
okay.
recommendations. We did a
Sorry, I
motion on
missed
that
that.
already.
Well, can I make one other comment then on that? I wanted to say, just for people who are watching that are our staff, one of the things that I read in the transcript that was very disheartening to me was that some staff members who testified at Latson's trial said that they felt that they could no longer teach controversial subjects because they felt like we wouldn't support them. And I actually would say the opposite is true. And so I wanted to say that for the community of teachers we have out there who are feeling hesitant to teach anything that may be controversial. We as a board, and you can see the community came out to support this subject area being taught. And I feel it's very important for everyone in the community to know that the board does support upholding this mandate and making sure that we teach these subjects with fidelity. It's very important to us. I think that the reasons that we are not wanting Mr. Latson to be employed here anymore are because he didn't do that, not because he did. So I will hope that the community and the teachers specifically feel the support of the board, because we do really support you in the work that we are trying to do, and I hope that comes across in our discussion today. Thank you.
Ms. Breaux.
Thank you. So I'm not clear if there's a motion on the floor, but I'd like to provide a substitute motion that we adopt the comments that Mr. Barbieri, his recommendations, along with, and ask the legal department to incorporate anything that may be absent from those recommendations that others of us have provided to legal.
All right. There's a motion by Ms. Brill, seconded by Mrs. Andrews. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Mr. Barbieri, there had been a previous motion, I think Mrs. Whitfield made it, about incorporating this. So I just to be clear, this is
The second motion on
this
the
is
same
a second motion.
Okay.
Pretty
So
much on
the board doubly
covering
wants
the
you to
same
do
thing.
that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Two's better than none.
Yes. So before we move on to the board discussion items, you have anything else, Mr. Fahey?
Mrs. Bass.
Ms. Bass? Who made the motion on the date and time? Mrs. Whitfield made the motion, and it was seconded by Dr. Robinson. Okay. All right. Before we go into the board discussion items, I just want to thank Mr. Littlejohn and his team, Denise Sagerholm, Yolanda Moore, Bruce, and of course Mr. Fahey for helping the board with all of this. I know it's difficult with the general counsel having to be separated and all that. So thank you very much for supporting the board and helping us get through this process.
Absolutely.
So we have 3 board discussion items, and